Let's fucking do this. Because then after this, I'm gonna fucking pass out and hope for the best and hope I sleep. Because if not, Comic-Con's gonna be very fucking long. Oh, here we go, lads. Am I, like, really far away? Thank you. Tyrannosaur. The jeep bounced along in the glaring sun. Muldoon was driving with Gennaro at his side. They were in an open field, moving away from the dense line of foliage and palm trees that marked the course of the river 100 yards to the east. They came to a rise and Muldoon stopped the car. "Christ, it's hot," he said, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. He drank from the bottle of whiskey between his knees, then offered it to Gennaro. Gennaro shook his head. Then he stared at the landscape shimmering in the morning heat. Then he looked down at the onboard computer and video monitor mounted in the dashboard. The monitor shows views of the park from remote cameras. Still no sign of Grant or the children. Or of the Tyrannosaur. The radio crackled. "Muldoon?" Muldoon picked up the handset. "Yeah? You got your onboards? I found the Rex. He's in grid 442. Going to 443. "Just a minute," Muldoon said, adjusting the monitor. "Yeah, I got him now, following the river." The animal was slinking along the foliage that lined the banks of the river going north. "Take it easy with him. Just immobilize him." "Don't worry," Muldoon said, squinting in the sun. "I won't hurt him." "Remember," Arnold said, "the Tyrannosaur's our main tourist attraction." Muldoon turned off his radio with a crackle of static. "Bloody fool," he said. "They're still talking about tourists." Muldoon started the engine. "Let's go see Rexy and give him a dose." The jeep jolted over the terrain. "You're looking forward to this," Gennaro said. "I've wanted to put a needle in that big bastard for a while," Muldoon said. And there he is. They came to a wrenching stop. Through the windshield, Gennaro saw the Tyrannosaur directly ahead of them, moving among the palm trees along the river. Muldoon drained the whiskey bottle and threw it in the back seat. He reached back for his tubing. Gennaro looked at the video monitor, which showed their jeep and the Tyrannosaur. There must be a closed-circuit camera in the tree somewhere behind. "You want to help?" Muldoon said. "You can break out those canisters by your feet." Gennaro bent over and opened a stainless steel Halliburton case. It was padded inside with foam. 4 cylinders, each the size of a quart milk bottle, was nestled in the foam. They were all labelled Moro 709. He took one out. "You snap off the tip and screw on the needle," Muldoon explained. Gennaro found a plastic package of large needles, each the diameter of his fingertip. He screwed one onto the canister. The opposite end of the canister had a circular lead weight. "That's the plunger. Compresses it on impact." Muldoon sat forward with the air rifle across his knees. It was made of a heavy grey tubular metal and looked to Gennaro like a bazooka or a rocket launcher. "What's Moro 709? "Standard animal trank," Muldoon said. "Zoos around the world use it. We'll try 1000 cc to start." Muldoon cracked open the chamber, which was large enough to insert his fist. He slipped the canister into the chamber and closed it. "That should do it," Muldoon said. "Standard elephant gets about 200 cc's, but there's only 2 or 3 tons each. Tyrannosaurus Rex is 8 tons and a lot meaner. That matters to the dose." "Why?" "Animal dose is partly body weight and partly temperament. You shoot the same dose of 709 into an elephant, a hippo, and a rhino. You'll immobilize the elephant, so it just stands there like a statue. You'll slow down the hippo, so it gets kind of sleepy, but it keeps moving. And the rhino will just get fighting mad. But on the other hand, you chase a rhino for more than 5 minutes in a car, and it'll drop dead from the adrenaline shock. Strange combination of tough and delicate." Muldoon drove slowly toward the river, moving closer to the Tyrannosaur. "But those are all mammals. We know a lot about handling mammals, because zoos are built around the big mammalian attractions. Lions, tigers, bear, elephants. We know a lot less about reptiles, and nobody knows anything about dinosaurs. The dinosaurs are new animals." "You consider them reptiles?" Gennaro said. "No," Muldoon said, shifting gears. "Dinosaurs don't fit existing categories." He swerved to avoid a rock. "Actually, what we find is the dinosaurs were The dinosaurs were as variable as mammals are today. Some dinos are tame and cute, and some are mean and nasty. Some of them see well, some of them don't. Some of them are stupid, and some of them are very, very intelligent. Like the raptors," Gennaro said. Muldoon nodded. "Raptors are smart. Very smart. Believe me, all the problems we have so far," he said, "are nothing compared to what we'd have if the raptors ever got out of that holding pen." I think this is the closest we can get to our Rexy. Up ahead, the Tyrannosaur was poking its head through the branches, peering toward the river, trying to get through. Then the animal moved a few yards downstream to try again. Wonder what he sees in there, Gennaro said. Hard to know, Muldoon said. Maybe he's trying to get to the Microceratopsians that scramble among the branches. They'll run him a merry chase. Muldoon stopped the jeep about 50 yards away from the Tyrannosaur and turned the vehicle around. He left the motor running. Get behind the wheel, Muldoon said, and put your seatbelt on. He took another canister and hooked it onto his shirt. And then he got out. Gennaro slid behind the wheel. You done this very often before? Muldoon belched. Never. I'll try to get him just behind the auditory meters. We'll see how it goes from there. He walked 10 yards behind the jeep, crouched down in the grass on one knee. He steadied the big gun against his shoulder and flipped the thick telescopic sight. Muldoon aimed at the Tyrannosaur, which still ignored them. There was a burst of pale gas, and Gennaro saw a white streak shoot forward in the air toward the Tyrannosaur. But nothing seemed to happen. Then the Tyrannosaur turned slowly, curiously, to peer at them. It moved its head from side to side, as if looking at them with alternate eyes. Muldoon had taken down the launcher and was loading a second canister. You hit him? Gennaro said. Muldoon shook his head. Missed. Damn laser sights. See if there's a battery in the case. A what? Gennaro said. A battery? Muldoon said. It's about as big as your finger. Grey markings. Gennaro bent over to look in the steel case. He felt the vibration of the jeep, heard the motor ticking over. He didn't see a battery. The Tyrannosaur roared. To Gennaro it was a terrifying sound, rumbling from a great chest cavity of an animal, bellowing out over the landscape. He sat up sharply and reached for the steering wheel, put his hand on the gear shift. On the radio he heard a voice say, Muldoon, this is Arnold. Get out of there. Over. I know what I'm doing, Muldoon said. The Tyrannosaur charged. Muldoon stood his ground, despite the creature racing towards him. He slowly and methodically raised his launcher, aimed and fired. Once again, Gennaro saw a puff of smoke and the white streak of a canister going toward the animal. Nothing happened. The Tyrannosaur continued to charge. Now Muldoon was on his feet, running, shouting, Go! Go! Gennaro put the jeep into gear, and Muldoon threw himself onto the side door of the jeep as it lurched forward. The Tyrannosaur was closing rapidly, and Muldoon swung the door open and climbed inside. Go, damn it, go! Gennaro floored it. The jeep bounced precariously, the front end nosing so high they only saw sky through the windshield, then slamming down toward the ground and racing forward again. Gennaro headed for a stand of trees to the left until, in the rearview mirror, he saw the Tyrannosaur give a final roar and turn away. Must go faster. Do I have that one? No, I only have T-Rex sounds. Gotta love T-Rex sounds. Gennaro slowed the car. Jesus. Muldoon was shaking his head. I could have sworn I hit it the second time. I say you missed, Gennaro said. Needle must have broken off before the plunger injected. Admit it, you missed. Yeah, Muldoon said. He sighed. I missed. Battery was dead in the damn laser sights. My fault. I should have checked it after it was out all last night. Let's go back and get more canisters. The jeep headed north toward the hotel. Muldoon picked up the radio. Control? Yes, Arnold said. We're heading back to base. The river was now very narrow, flowing swiftly. The raft was going faster all the time. It started to feel like an amusement park ride. Whee! Lex yelled, holding onto the gunwale. Faster! Faster! Grant squinted, looking forward. The river was still narrow and dark, but further ahead he could see the trees ended, and there was a bright sunlight beyond, and a distant roaring sound. The river seemed to end abruptly in a particularly flat line. The raft was still going faster, rushing forward. Grant grabbed for his paddles. What is it? It's a waterfall, Grant said. The raft swept out of the overhanging darkness into brilliant morning sunlight and raced forward on the swift current towards the lip of the waterfall. The roar was loud in their ears. Grant paddled as strongly as he could, and he only succeeded in spinning the boat around in circles. It continued inexorably towards the lip. Lex leaned down toward him. I can't swim. Grant saw that she did not have a life vest clasped, but there was nothing he could do about it. With frightening speed, they came to the edge, and the roar of the waterfall seemed to fill the world. Grant jammed his oar deep into the water, felt it catch and hold right at the lip. The rubber raft shuddered in in the current, but they did not go over. Grant strained against the oar and looked over the edge and saw the sheer drop of 50 feet down to the surging pool below. And standing in the surging pool, waiting for them, was the Tyrannosaur. Lex was screaming in panic, and then the boat spun, and the rear end dropped away, spilling them out into the air and roaring water, and they fell sickeningly. Grant flailed his arms in the air, and the world suddenly went silent and slow. Why does my Face ID never want to work when I just want to check things? It seemed to him he fell for long minutes. He had time to observe Lex, clutching her orange jacket, falling alongside him. He had time to observe Tim, looking down at the bottom. He had time to observe the frozen white sheet of the waterfall. He had time to observe the bubbling pool beneath him as he fell, slowly, silently toward it. Then, with a stinging slap, Grant plunged into the cold water, surrounded by white, boiling bubbles. He tumbled and spun and glimpsed the leg of the Tyrannosaur as he swirled past it, swept down through the pool and out into the stream beyond. Grant swam for the shore, clutched warm rocks, slipped off, caught a branch, and finally poured himself onto the main current. Gasping, he dragged himself on his belly onto the rocks and looked at the river just in time to see the brown rubber raft tumble past him. He then saw Tim, battling the current, and he reached out and pulled him, coughing and shivering, onto the shore beside him. Grant turned back to the waterfall and saw the Tyrannosaur plunge its head straight down into the water of the pool at his feet. The great head shook, splashing water either side. It had something between its teeth. And then the Tyrannosaur lifted its head back up, dangling from its jaws with Lex's orange life vest. A moment later, Lex bobbed to the surface beside the dinosaur's long tail. She lay face down in the water, her little body swept downstream by the current. Grant plunged into the water after her, was again immersed in the churning torrent. A moment later, he pulled her up onto the rocks, a heavy, lifeless weight. Her face was grey. Water poured from her mouth. Grant bent over to give her mouth-to-mouth, but she coughed and then vomited yellow-green liquid and coughed again. Her eyelids fluttered. "Hi," she said. She smiled weakly. "We did it." Tim started to cry. She coughed again. "Will you stop it? What are you crying for?" "Because we were worried about you," Grant said. Small flecks of white were drifting down the river. The Tyrannosaur was tearing up the life vest. Still turned away from them, facing the waterfall. But at any minute, the animal might turn and see him. "Come on, kids," he said. "Where are we going?" Lex said, coughing. "Come on." He was looking for a hiding place. Downstream, he saw only an open, grassy plain, affording no protection. Upstream was the dinosaur. Then Grant saw a dirt path by the river. It seemed to lead up toward the waterfall. And in the dirt path, he saw the clear imprint of a man's shoe leading up the path. The Tyrannosaur finally turned around, growling and looking out towards the grassy plain. It seemed to have figured out that they had gotten away. It was looking for them downstream. Grant and the kids ducked among the big ferns that lined the riverbanks. Cautiously, he led them upstream. "Where are we going?" Lex said. "We're going back." "I know." They were closer to the waterfall now, the roar much louder. The rocks became slippery, the path muddy. There was a constant hanging mist. It was like moving through a cloud. The path seemed to lead right into the rushing water. But as they came closer, they saw it actually went behind the waterfall. The Tyrannosaur was still looking downstream, its back turned to them. They hurried along the path to the waterfall and almost moved behind the sheet of falling water when Grant saw the Tyrannosaur turn. Then they were completely behind the waterfall, and Grant was unable to see through the silver sheet. Grant looked around in surprise. There was a little recess here, hardly larger than a closet, and filled with machinery, humming pumps and big filters and pipes. Everything was wet and cold. "Did he see us?" Lex said. She had to shout over the noise of the falling water. "Where are we? What is this place? Did he see us?" "Just a minute," Grant said. He was looking at the equipment. This was clearly park machinery, and there must be electricity to run it, so perhaps there was a telephone for communication. He poked among the filters and pipes. "What are you doing?" Lex shouted. "Looking for a telephone." It was nearly 10 a.m. They just had a little more than an hour to contact the ship before it reached the mainland. In the back of the recess, he found a metal door marked Mate 04, but it was firmly locked. Next to it was a slot for security cards. Alongside the door, he saw a row of metal boxes. He opened the boxes one after the other, but they only contained switches and timers, no telephone, and nothing to open the door. He almost missed the box to the left of the door. On opening, he found a 9-button keypad, covered with spots of green mould. But if it looked as if there was a way to open the door, and he had a feeling that on the other side of the door was a phone. Scratched in the metal box on the number was 1023. He punched it in. With a hiss, the door came open. Gaping darkness beyond, concrete steps leading downward. On the back wall, he saw stenciling, Mate, Vehicle, 0422, Charger, and an arrow pointing down the stairs. Could it really mean there was a car? Come on, kids. Forget it, Lex said. I'm not going in there. Come on, Lex, Tim said. Forget it, Lex said. There's no lights or anything. I'm not going. Never mind, Grant said. There wasn't time to argue. Stay here and I'll be right back. Where are you going? Lex said, suddenly alarmed. Grant stepped through the door. It gave an electronic beep and snapped shut behind him. On a spring. Grant was plunged into darkness. After a moment of surprise, he turned to the door and felt its damp surface. There was no knob, no latch. He turned to the walls either side, feeling for a switch, a control box, anything at all. There was nothing. He was fighting panic when his fingers closed over a cold metal cylinder. He ran his hands over the swelling edge and a flat surface. A flashlight. He clicked it on and the beam was surprisingly bright. He looked back at the door and saw that it would not open. He would have to wait for the kids to unlock it. Meantime, he started for the steps. They were damp and slippery with mould, and he went down carefully. Partway down the stairs, he heard a sniffing and the sound of claws scratching on a concrete. He took out the dart pistol and proceeded cautiously. The steps bent around the corner, and as he shone the light, an odd reflection glinted back, and then, a moment later, he saw it. A car. It was an electric car, like a golf car, and it faced a long tunnel that seemed to stretch for miles. A bright red light glowed by the steering wheel, so perhaps it was charged. Grant heard the sniffing again, and he wheeled and saw a pale shape rise toward him, leaping through the air, its jaws open, and without thinking, Grant fired. The animal landed on him, knocking him down, and he rolled away in fright, his flashlight swinging wildly. But the animal didn't get up, and he felt foolish when he saw it. It was a velociraptor, but very young, less than a year old. It was about 2 feet tall, the size of a medium dog, and it lay on the ground, breathing shallowly, the dart sticking from beneath its jaw. There was probably too much anesthetic for its body weight, and Grant pulled out the dart quickly. The velociraptor looked at him with slightly glazed eyes. Grant had a clear feeling of intelligence from this creature, a kind of softness which contrasted strangely with the menace he felt from the adults in the pen. He stroked the head of the velociraptor, hoping to calm it. He looked down at the body, which was shivering slightly as the tranquilizer took hold, and then he saw it was a male, a young juvenile, and a male. There was no question what he was seeing. This velociraptor had been bred in the wild. Excited by this development, he hurried back up to the stairs of the door. With his flashlight, he scanned the flat, featureless surface of the door and the interior walls. As he ran his hands over the door, it slowly dawned on him that he was locked in and unable to open it, unless the kids had the presence of mind to open it for him. He could hear them faintly on the other side. "Dr. Grant," Lex shouted, pounding the door. "Dr. Grant!" "Take it easy," Tim said. "He'll be back." "But where did he go?" "Listen, Dr. Grant knows what he's doing," Tim said. "He'll be back any minute. He should come back now," Lex said. She bunched her fists on her hips, pushed her elbows wide. She stamped her foot angrily, and then with a roar, the Tyrannosaur's head burst through the waterfall towards them. Tim stared in horror as the big mouth gaped wide. Lex shrieked and threw herself on the ground. The head swung back and forth and pulled out again. But Tim could see the shadow of the animal's head on the sheet of the falling water. He pulled Lex deeper into the recess just as the jaws burst through again, roaring, the thick tongue flicking in and out rapidly. The water sprayed in all directions from the head, then it poured out again. Lex huddled next to Tim, shivering. "I hate him," she said. She huddled back, but the recess was only a few feet deep, and crammed with machinery. There wasn't any place for them to hide. The head came through the water again, but slowly this time. The jaw came to rest on the ground. The Tyrannosaur snorted, flaring its nostrils, breathing the air, but the eyes were still outside the sheet of water. Tim thought, he can't see us. He knows we're in it, but he can't see through the water. The Tyrannosaur sniffed. What is he doing? Lex said again. Shh. With a loud growl, the jaws slowly opened and the tongue snaked out. It was thick and blue and black, with a little fork in the dentation at the tip. It was 4 feet long and easily reached back to the far wall of the recess. The tongue slid with a rasping scrape over the filter cylinders. Tim and Lex pressed back against the pipes. The tongue moved slowly to the left and to the right, slapping wetly against the machinery. The tip curled around the pipes and valves, sensing them. Tim saw the tongue had muscular movements like an elephant's trunk. The tongue drew back along the right side of the recess. It dragged against Lex's legs. "You," Lex said. The tongue stopped. It curled and began to rise like a snake up the side of her body. "Don't move," Tim whispered, past her face, then up again along Tim's shoulder and finally wrapping around his head. Tim squeezed his eyes shut as a slimy muscle covered his face. It was hot and wet and it stunk like urine. Wrapped around him, the tongue began to drag him very slowly towards the open jaws. "Timmy?" Tim couldn't answer. His mouth was covered by the flat black tongue. He could see, but he couldn't talk. Lex tugged at his hand. "Come on, Timmy." The tongue dragged him towards the snorting mouth. He felt the hot, panting breath of his legs. Lex was tugging at him, but she was no match for the muscular power that held him. Tim let go of her and pressed the tongue with both hands, trying to shove it over his head. He couldn't move it. He dug his heels into the muddy ground, but he was dragged forward anyway. Lex had wrapped her arms around his waist and was pulling backwards, shouting to him. But he was powerless to do anything. He was beginning to see stars. A kind of peacefulness overcame him, a sense of peaceful inevitability, as he was dragged along. "Timmy?" And then suddenly the tongue relaxed, uncoiled. Tim felt it slipping off his face. His body was covered in a disgusting white foamy slime, and the tongue fell limply to the ground. The jaws slapped shut, biting down on the tongue. Dark blood gushed out, mixing with the mud. The nostrils snorted in ragged breaths. "What's he doing?" Lex cried. And then slowly, very slowly, the head began to slide backwards, out of the recess, leaving a long scrape in the mud, and finally it disappeared entirely. They could only see the silver sheet of falling water. "Control." "Okay," Arnold said in the control room. "The Rex is down." He pushed back in his chair and grinned as he lit the final cigarette and crumpled the pack. That did it, the final step in putting the part back in order. Now all they had to do was go out and move it. "Son of a bitch," Muldoon said, looking at the monitor. "I got him after all." He turned to Gennaro. "It just took him an hour to feel it." Henry Wu frowned at the screen, but he could drown in that position. "He won't drown," Muldoon said. "Never seen an animal that was harder to kill." "I think we have to go out and move him," Arnold said. "We will," Muldoon said. He didn't sound enthusiastic. "That's a valuable animal." "I know it's a valuable animal," Muldoon said. Arnold turned to Gennaro. He couldn't resist a moment of triumph. "I'd point out to you," he said, "that the park is now completely back to normal. Whatever Malcolm's mathematical model said was going to happen. We are completely under control again." Gennaro pointed at the screen behind Arnold's head and said, "What's that?" Arnold turned. It was the system's status box. In the upper corner of the screen. Ordinarily it was empty. Arnold was surprised to see it was now blinking yellow. "Aux power. Low." For a moment he didn't understand. Why should auxiliary power be low? They were running on main power, not auxiliary power. He thought perhaps it was just routine status to check on the auxiliary power, perhaps a check on the fuel tank or battery charge. "Henry," Arnold said to Wu, "look at this." Why are you running on auxiliary power? I'm not, Arnold said. It looks like you are. It can't be. Print the system status log, Wu said. The log was a record of the system over the last few hours. Arnold pressed a button and they heard the hum of a printer in the corner. Wu walked over to it. Arnold stared at the screen. The box now turned from flashing yellow to red. And the message now read, Aux power fail. The numbers began to count backward from 20. What the hell is going on? Arnold said. Really do not. I need to get like the headphones that have the little rubber bits, I swear. Tongue wiggled wetly. Yeah, the tongue is a prominent feature, but at least if you've seen Lost World, you would have seen it in its beautiful glory, because that then became it in the Lost World. When they have the waterfall scene, where the guy runs out because of a fucking snake. Yeah, good idea. Run out because of the non-poisonous or non-venomous snake. But yeah, run to the T-Rex, you fucking moron. This is why men die quickly. Dumb. I'm just saying. Cautiously, Tim moved a few yards out along the muddy path and into the sunshine. He peered around the waterfall and saw the Tyrannosaur lying on its side, floating in the pool of water below. I hope he's dead, Lex said. Tim could see he wasn't. The dinosaur's chest was still moving, and one forearm twitched in spasms. But something was wrong with him. Then Tim saw the white canister sticking out the back of the head, by the indentation of the ear. He's been shot with a dart, Tim said. Good, Lex said. Practically ate us. Tim watched the laboured breathing. He felt unexpectedly distressed to see the huge animal humbled like this. He didn't want it to die. It's not his fault, he said. Oh, sure, Lex said. He practically ate us, and it's not his fault. He's a carnivore. He's just doing what he does. You wouldn't say that, Lex said, if you were in his stomach right now. Then the sound of the waterfall changed. From a deafening roar, it became softer, quieter. The thundering sheet of water thinned, became a trickle, and stopped. Timmy, the waterfall stopped, Lex said. It was now just dripping like a tap that wasn't completely turned off. The pool at the base of the waterfall was still. They stood near the top, in the cave-like indentation, filled with machinery looking down. Waterfalls aren't supposed to stop, Lex said. Must be the power. Somebody turned off the power. Behind them, all the pumps and filters were shutting down one after the other. The lights were blinking off, and the machinery became quiet. And then there was the thunk of a solenoid releasing, and the door, marked Mate 04, swung slowly open. Grant stepped out, blinking into the light. Good work, kid, you got the door open. We didn't do anything, Lex said. The power went out, Tim said. Never mind that, come and see what I found. Great guy to have around kids. Arnold stared in shock. One after another, the monitors went blank. Then the room lights went out, plunging the control room into darkness and confusion. Everyone started yelling at once. Muldoon opened the blinds and let the light in, and Wu brought over the printouts. Look at this, Wu said. Loads of fucking events. Startup, shutdown, startup command, aux power, blah, 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 blah. Wu said, you shut down at 5:13 this morning, and when you started back up, you started with auxiliary power. Jesus. Apparently main power had not been on since shutdown. When he powered back up, only the auxiliary power came on. Arnold was thinking that was strange. When he suddenly realised that was normal. That was what was supposed to happen. It made perfect sense. The auxiliary generator fired up first, and it was used to turn on the main generator. But it took a heavy charge to start the main power generator. That was the way the system was designed. But Arnold had never before had occasion to turn the manpower back on, and when the lights and screens came back on in the control room, it never occurred to him the main power hadn't come back. Hadn't been restored, sorry. But it hadn't. And all those times since then, when they were looking for the wrecks and doing one thing after another, the park had been running on Orc's power. And that wasn't a good idea. In fact, the implications were just beginning to hit. What does that line mean? Muldoon said, pointing to the list. Warning, fence status. Goodbye, fences. This is why we do test drills. Yeah, you would think, wouldn't you? It means a system status warning was sent to the monitors in the control room concerning the fences. Did you see that warning? No, I must have been talking to you in the field. Anyway, no, I didn't see it. What does it mean? Warning, fence status. Well, I didn't know it at the time, but we were running on backup power. And backup power doesn't generate enough amperage to power the electrified fences. So they were automatically kept off. The electrified fences were off. Yes. All of them. Since 5 this morning. For the last 5 hours. Yes. Including the Velociraptor fences. Arnold sighed. Yes. Jesus Christ, Muldoon said. 5 hours. Those animals could be out. And then, from somewhere in the distance, they heard a scream. Muldoon began to talk very fast. He went around the room, handing out the portable radios. Mr. Arnold is going to go down to the maintenance sheds to turn on the main power. Dr. Wu, stay in the control room. You're the only other one who can work the computers. Mr. Hammond, go back to the lodge. Don't argue with me. Go. Now. I'll help Arnold deal with the raptors. He turned to Gennaro. Like to live dangerously again? Not really, Gennaro said. He was very pale. Raptors have been out ages. There's only 5 of them up. Yes, but the main raptors, the main ones, they're not out. Well, they are. They very much are. But the main ones they thought were nice and at home. Bitch, I'm live. Why are you messaging me now? All day. Don't drive in them. Fine. Then go with the others to the lodge. Muldoon turned away. That's it, everybody. Now move. Hammond whined. But what are you going to do to my animals? I'm going to fucking shoot them. That's what I'm going to do. That's not really the question, Mr. Hammond. The question is, what are they going to do to us? He went through the door and hurried down the hall toward his office. Gennaro fell into step alongside him. Change your mind? Muldoon growled. You'll need help. Honestly, I'll be worried about the 30 plus, but sure, focus on the 3. Yes. But you have to remember that a good couple of people in here don't know there are 30 plus. They think the system's wrong. They're saying, oh look, the numbers say 30 plus. No one knows for sure other than the people that are in the park. Muldoon and all that think that this is still just an error on the computer. They think there's 3, and one of them's the big one. They're fucked either way. So. Muldoon went into the room marked Animal Supervisor, picked up the grey shoulder launcher, and unlocked a panel in the wall behind his desk. There were 6 cylinders and 6 canisters. The thing about these damn dinos, Muldoon said, is that they have disturbed nervous systems. They don't die fast, even with a direct hit to the brain. And they're built solidly. Thick ribs to make a shot to the heart dicey. And they're difficult to cripple in the legs or hindquarters. Slow bleeders, slow to die. He opened a cylinder one after the other, dropping in. He was opening the cylinders one after the other and dropping them into canisters. He tossed a thick web belt to Gennaro. Put that on him. Gennaro tightened the belt, and Muldoon passed him the shells. About all we can hope is to blow them apart. Unfortunately, we've only got 6 shells here. There's 8 raptors in the fence compound. Let's go. Let's go. Stay close. You have the shells. So yeah, there's actually 8, because the 8 don't actually all get murdered. Like they do in the movie. Muldoon went out and ran along the hallway, looking down over the balcony to the path leading toward the maintenance shed. Gennaro was popping alongside him. They got to the ground floor and went out through the glass doors, and Muldoon stopped. Arnold was standing there with his back to the maintenance shed. 3 raptors approached him. Arnold had picked up a stick and was waving it at them, shouting. The raptors fanned out as they came closer, one staying in the center, the other 2 moving to the side. Coordinated. Smooth. Gennaro shivered. behavior. Muldoon was already crouching, setting the launcher on his shoulder. Load, he said. Gennaro slipped the shell into the back of the launcher. There was an electric sizzle. Nothing happened. Christ, you've got it in backwards, Muldoon said, tilting the barrel so the shell fell out into Gennaro's hands. Gennaro loaded again. The raptors were snarling at Arnold, when the animal on the left simply exploded. The upper part of the torso flying in the air, blood spattering like a burst tomato on the walls of the building. The lower torso collapsed on the ground, the legs kicking in the air, the tail flopping. That'll wake him up, Muldoon said. Arnold ran for the door of the maintenance shed. The velociraptors turned and started towards Muldoon and Gennaro. They fanned out as they came closer. In the distance, somewhere near the lodge, he heard screams. Gennaro said, "This could be a disaster." "Load," Muldoon said. Henry Wu heard the explosions and looked towards the door of the control room. He circled around the consoles, then paused. He wanted to go out, but he knew he should stay in the room. If Arnold were able to get the power on, if only for a minute, then Wu could restart the main generator. He had to stay in the room. He heard someone screaming. It sounded like Muldoon. Muldoon felt a wrenching pain in his ankle, tumbled down an embankment and hit the ground running. Looking back, he saw Gennaro running in the other direction into the forest. The raptors were ignoring Gennaro but pursuing Muldoon. They were now less than 20 yards away. Muldoon screamed at the top of his lungs as he ran, wondering vaguely where the hell he could go. Because he knew he had perhaps 10 seconds before they got him. 10 seconds. Maybe less. Ellie had to help Malcolm turn over as Harding jabbed the needle and injected morphine. Malcolm sighed and collapsed back. He seemed he was growing weaker by the minute. Over the radio they heard tinny screaming and muffled explosions coming from the visitor centre. Hammond came into the room and said, "How is he?" "He's holding," Harding said, a bit delirious. "I'm nothing of the sort," Malcolm said. "I am utterly clear." They listened to the radio. "Sounds like war out there." "The raptors got out," Hammond said. "Did they?" Malcolm said, breathing shallowly. "How could that possibly happen?" "It was a system screw-up. Arnold didn't realise the Orc's power was on and the fences cut out." "Did they?" "Go to hell, you supercilious bastard." "If I remember," Malcolm said, "I predicted fence integrity would fail." Hammond sighed and sat down heavily. "Damn it all," he said, shaking his head. "It must surely not have escaped your notice that at heart what we were attempting here is an extremely simple idea. My colleagues and I determined several years ago that it was possible to clone the DNA of an extinct animal and to grow it. That seemed to us a wonderful idea. It was kind of time travel, the only time travel in the world. Bring them back alive, so to speak. And since it was so exciting, and since it was possible to do it, we decided to go forward. We got an island, we proceeded. It was all very simple." "Simple?" Malcolm said. Suddenly found the energy to sit up in bed. "Simple? You're a bigger fool than I thought you were. And I thought you were a very substantial fool." And he said, "Dr. Malcolm," and tried to ease him back down. But Malcolm would have none of it. He pointed towards the radio, the shouts and the cries. "What is that going on out there?" he said. "That's your simple idea." "Simple. You create new life forms about which you know nothing at all. Your Dr. Wu does not even know the names of the things he's creating. He cannot be bothered with such details as what the thing is called, let alone what it is. You create many of them in a very short time. You never learn anything about them. Yet you expect them to do your bidding? Because you made them, and you therefore think you own them. You forgot that they are alive, that they have intelligence of their own. And they may not do your bidding. And you forget how little you know about them, how incompetent you are to do things you so frivolously call simple. Dear God, he sat back, coughing. "You know what's wrong with scientific power?" Malcolm said. "It's a form of inherited wealth. And you know what arseholes congenitally rich people are. It never fails." Hammond said, "What are you talking about?" Harding made a sign indicating delirium. Malcolm cocked his eye. "I will tell you what I was talking about," he said. "Most kinds of power require substantial sacrifice by whoever wants the power. Whatever kind of power you want. President of the company, black belt in karate, spiritual guru. Whatever it is you seek, you have to put in the time, the practice, the effort. You must give up a lot to get it. It has to be very important to you, and once you have attained it, it is your power. It can't be giving away. It resides in you. It is literally the result of your discipline. Now, what is interesting about the process is, what's interesting about the process is that by the time someone has acquired the ability to kill with his bare hands, he is also matured to the point where he won't use it unwisely. So that power has built-in control. The discipline of getting power changes you so you won't abuse it. The scientific power is like inherited wealth, attained without discipline. You read what others have done and you take the next step. You can do it very young. You can make progress very fast. There is no discipline, lasting many decades. There is no mastery. Old scientists are ignored. There is no humility before nature. There is only get rich quick, make a name for yourself fast philosophy. Cheat, lie, falsify. Doesn't matter. Not to you or to your colleagues. No one will criticize you. No one has any standards. They are all trying to do the same thing, to do something big, and do it fast. And because you stand on the shoulders of giants, you can accomplish something quickly. You don't even know exactly what you have done, but already you reported it, patented it, and sold it. And the buyer will have even less discipline than you. The buyer simply purchases the power, like any commodity. The buyer doesn't even conceive that the discipline might be necessary. Hammond said, "Do you know what he's talking about?" Ellie nodded. "I haven't a clue," Hammond said. "I'll make it simple," Malcolm said. "A karate master does not kill people with his bare hands. He does not lose his temper and kill his wife. The person who kills is the person who has no discipline, no restraint, and who has purchased his power in the form of a Saturday night special. And that is the kind of power that science fosters and permits. And this is why you think that this place, to build a place, was simple. It was simple," Hammond insisted. "Then why did it go wrong?" Fucking love Malcolm's little speeches. Dizzy with tension, John Arnold threw open the door to the maintenance shed and stepped into the darkness inside. Jesus, it was black. He should have realised the lights would be out. He felt the cold air, the cavernous dimensions of the space, extending 2 floors below him. He had to find the catwalk. He had to be careful or he'd break his neck. The catwalk. He groped like a blind man until he realised it was futile. Somehow he had to get light into the shed. He went back to the door and cracked it open 4 inches. They gave enough light, but there was no way to keep the door open. Quickly he kicked off his shoe and stuck it in the door. He went through the catwalk, seeing it easily. He walked along the metal, hearing the difference in his feet. One loud, one soft, but at least he could see. Up ahead was the stairway leading down to the generators, another 10 yards. Darkness. The light was gone. Arnold looked back to the door and saw the light was blocked by the body of a velociraptor. The animal bent over and carefully sniffed the shoe. Henry Wu paced. He ran his hands over the computer consoles. He touched the screens. He was in constant movement. It was almost frantic with tension. He reviewed the steps he would take. He must be quick. The first screen would come up and he would press Woo. The radio hissed. Does he have his little stick? I don't think so. He grabbed it. "Yes, I'm here. Got any bloody power yet?" It was Muldoon. There was something odd about his voice, something hollow. "No," Wu said. He smiled, glad to know Muldoon was alive. "I think Arnold made it to the shed. After that, I don't know." "Where are you?" Wu said. "I'm stuffed." "What?" "Stuffed in a bloody pipe," Muldoon said, "and I'm very popular at the moment." Wedged in a pipe was more like it, Muldoon thought. There had been a stack of drainage pipes piled up behind the visitor centre, and he backed himself into the nearest one, scrambling like a poor bastard. Meter pipes, very tight for him, but they couldn't come in after him. At least, not after he shot the leg off one, when the nosy bastard came too close to the pipe. The raptor had gone howling off, and the others were now respectful. His only regret was they hadn't waited to see the snout at the ends before he squeezed the trigger. But he might still have a chance, because there was 3 or 4 outside, snarling and growling around him. "Yeah, very popular," he said into the radio. "Does Arnold have his radio?" "I don't think so." "Just sit tight, wait it out." He hadn't seen what the other end of the pipe was like. He'd backed in too quickly, but he couldn't see now. He was wedged tight. He could only hope that the far end wasn't open. Christ, he didn't like the thought of one of these bastards taking a bite of his hindquarters. Arnold backed away down the catwalk. The velociraptor was barely 10 feet away, stalking him, coming forward to the gloom. Arnold could hear the click of the deadly claws on the metal. But he was going slowly. He knew the animal could see well, but the grill of the catwalk, the unfamiliar mechanical odours, must have it cautious. That caution was his only chance, Arnold thought. If he could get to the stairs and then move to the floor below. Because he was pretty sure velociraptors couldn't climb stairs. Certainly not narrow, steep stairs. Oh my god, just let me do Face ID. Like, phone, you can see me. I just like to check shit. Fucking hell. Arnold glanced over his shoulder. The stairs were just a few feet away, another few steps. He was there. Reaching back, he felt the railing start scrambling down the almost vertical steps. His feet touched flat concrete. The raptor snarled in frustration, 20 feet above him on the catwalk. "Too bad, buddy," Arnold said. He turned away. He was now very close to the auxiliary generator. Just a few more steps, and then he would see it, even in this dim light. There was a dull thud behind him. The raptor was standing there on the concrete floor, snarling. It had jumped down. He looked quickly for a weapon, but suddenly he was slammed on his back onto the concrete. Something heavy was pressing on his chest. It was impossible to breathe, and he realized that the animal was standing on top of him. And he felt the big claws digging into the flesh of his chest and smelled the foul breath from the head moving above him. And he opened his mouth to scream. Ellie held the radio in her hands, listening. 2 more workmen had arrived at the lodge. They seemed to know it was safe here, but there had been no others in the last few minutes. And it sounded quieter outside. God forbid a raptor wants to be a gymnast. Legit. That's basically what Lost World is. Over the radio, Muldoon said, "How long has it been?" Wu said, 4 or 5 minutes. "Arnold should have done it by now," Muldoon said. "If he's going to. You got any ideas?" "No," Wu said. "We heard from Gennaro?" Gennaro pressed the button. "I'm here." "Where the hell are you?" Muldoon said. "I'm going to the maintenance building," Gennaro said. "Wish me luck." Gennaro crouched in the foliage, listening. Directly ahead, he saw the planted pathway leading towards the visitor center. Gennaro knew the maintenance shed was somewhere to the east. He heard the chirping of birds in the trees. The soft mist was blowing. One of the raptors roared, but it was some distance away. It sounded off to his right. Gennaro set out, leaving the path, plunged into foliage. Like to live dangerously? Not really. I love Gennaro and Muldoon's little fucking weird back and forth phrase. Like, yeah, come on, you're gonna go die with me. And he's like, I guess, sure. I fucking love it. And then you get Gennaro in the movie, who's just a combination of all the fucking little bitches. It was true, he didn't, but Gennaro thought he had a plan, or at least a possibility that might work. If he stayed north of the main complex of buildings, he could approach the maintenance shed from the rear. All the raptors were probably around the other buildings to the south. There was no reason for them to be in the jungle. I ship it, yeah. And when they survive, we'll find out. Maybe they were happily ever after. Maybe. I'll pick up the fucking T-Rex easy, man. Right, let me move that smidge so I can actually see it, because I'm going to have to lean a bit. I have to be that bitch that's like, hello. Which is annoying, because I've put the gain up, so this is probably really nice in people's ears. They both die. I don't think, in the nicest way, the blood-sucking lawyer and the man who hunted animals multiple times is going up. Right now, they can go to hell together. There he is, I'm just gonna read like this now. So I actually can't see the fucking words if it's that close. He moved as quietly as he could, unhappily aware he was making a lot of noise. Big romance in hell. He forced himself to a slowest pace, feeling his heart pound. The foliage here was very dense. He couldn't see more than 6 or 7 feet ahead of him. He began to worry they had missed the maintenance shed entirely, but then he saw the roof to the right, above the palms. He moved toward it, went to the side, and found the door open and slipped inside. It was very dark. He stumbled over something. A man's shoe. Gennaro frowned. He propped the door wide open and continued deeper into the building. He saw a catwalk directly ahead of him. Suddenly he realized he didn't know where he had to go, and he left his radio behind. I don't remember him being this dumb at this point. Gennaro, damn, there might be a radio here somewhere in the building. Or else just look for the generator. He knew what a generator looked like. Probably it was somewhere down on the lower floor. He found a staircase leading down. I feel like I actually do need to be back a bit, because I've put the gain back up like I did a few, and I'm just like looking at it like, hello! Nice and spiked. It was darker below, and it was difficult to see anything. He found his way among the pipes, holding his hands out to keep from banging his head. He heard an animal snarl and froze. He listened, but the sound did not come again. He moved forward cautiously. Something dripped on his shoulder and his bare arm. It was warm like water. He touched it in the darkness. Sticky. He smelled it. Blood. He looked up. The raptor was perched on pipes just a few feet above his head. Blood was trickling from its claws. With an odd sense of detachment, he wondered if it was injured. And then he began to run. But the raptor jumped on his back, pushing him to the ground. Gennaro was strong. He heaved up, knocking the raptor away, and rolled off across the concrete. When he turned back, he saw the raptor had fallen on its side, where it lay panting. Yes, it was injured. Its leg was hurt for some reason. Kill it. Gennaro scrambled to his feet, looking for a weapon. The raptor was still panting on the concrete. He looked frantically for something, anything to use as a weapon. When he turned back, the raptor was gone. It snarled, the sound echoing in the darkness. Gennaro turned in full circle, feeling with his outstretched hands, and then he felt a sharp pain in his right hand. Teeth. It was biting him. The raptor jerked his head, and Gennaro was yanked off his feet, and he fell. Lying in bed, soaked in sweat, Malcolm listened as the radio crackled. Anything? Muldoon said. You getting anything? No word, Wu said. Hell, Muldoon said. There was a pause. Malcolm sighed. I can't wait, he said, to hear his new plan. What I would like, Muldoon, is to get everybody to the lodge to regroup, but I don't see how. There's a jeep in front of the visitor centre. If I drove over to you, could you get yourself into it? Maybe, but you'd be abandoning the control room. I can't do anything here anyway. God knows that's true, Malcolm said. A control room without electricity is not much of a control room. All right, let's try. This isn't looking good. Lying in his bed, Malcolm said, No, it's not looking good. It's looking like a disaster. Wu said, The raptors are going to follow us over there. We're still better off, Malcolm said. Let's go. The radio clicked. Malcolm closed his eyes and breathed slowly, marshalling his strength. Just relax, Ellie said. Just take it easy. You know what we are really talking about here, Malcolm said. All this attempt to control. We're talking about the Western attitudes of that are 500 years old. They began at the time when Florence, Italy, was the most important city in the world. The basic idea of science, that there was no new way to look at reality, that it was objective, that it did not depend on your beliefs or your nationality, that it was rational, that the idea was fresh and exciting back then. It often promised and hoped for the future, and it swept away the old medieval system, which was hundreds of years old. The medieval world of feudal politics and religious dogma and hateful superstitions fell before science. But in truth, this was because the medieval world didn't really work anymore. It didn't work economically. It didn't work intellectually. And it didn't fit the new world that was emerging. Malcolm coughed. But now, he continued, science is the belief system that is hundreds of years old. And like the medieval system before, science is starting to not fit in the world anymore. Science has attained so much power that its practical limits begin to be apparent. Largely through science, billions of us live in one small world, densely packed and intercommunicating. But science cannot help us decide what to do with that world or how to live. Science can make a nuclear reactor, but it cannot tell us how not to build it. Science can make pesticide, but cannot tell us not to use it. And our world starts to seem polluted in fundamental ways. Air and water and land become because of an unforgiving science. This much is obvious to everyone. There was a silence. Malcolm lay with his eyes closed, his breathing laboured. No one spoke, and it seemed to Ellie that Malcolm had finally fallen asleep. Then he sat up again abruptly. At the same time, the great intellectual justification of science has vanished. Ever since Newton and Descartes, science has explicitly offered us the vision of total control. Science has claimed the power to eventually control everything through its understanding of natural laws. But in the 20th century, that claim has been shattered beyond repair. First, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle set limits on what we knew about the subatomic world. Oh, well, we say. None of us lives in a subatomic world. It doesn't make any practical difference as we go through our lives. Then Gödel's theorem sets similar limits to mathematics, the formal language of science. Mathematicians used to think that their language had some special inherent trueness that derived from the laws of logic. Now we know that what we call reason is just an arbitrary game. It's not special in the way we thought it was. And now chaos theory proves that unpredictability is built into our daily lives. It is as mundane as the rainstorm we cannot predict. And so the grand vision of science, hundreds of years old, the dream of total control, has died in our century. And with it, much of the justification, the rationale for science to do what it does, and for us to listen to it. Science has always said that it may not know everything now, but it will know eventually. But now we see that isn't true. It is an idle boast, as foolish and misguided as the child who jumps off a building because he believes he can fly. That is very extreme, Hammond said, shaking his head. We are witnessing the end of the scientific era. Science, like other outmoded systems, is destroying itself. As it gains in power, it proves incapable of handling the power. Because things are going very fast now. 50 years ago, everyone was gaga over the atomic bomb. That was power. No one could imagine anything more. Yet a bare decade after that bomb, we began to have genetic power. And genetic power is far more potent than atomic power. And yet it will be in everyone's hand. It will be in the kits for backyard gardeners, experiments for school children, cheap labs for terrorists and dictators. And they will force everyone to ask the same questions. What should I do with my power? Which is the very question science says it cannot answer. So what will happen? Change. What kind of change? All major changes are like death, he said. You can't see the other side until you are there. And he closed his eyes. That poor man, Hammond said, shaking his head. Malcolm sighed. Do you have any idea how unlikely it is that you or any of us will get off this island alive? Sixth iteration. System recovery may prove impossible. Ian Malcolm. Return. Its electric motor whirring. The cart raced forward down the dark underground tunnel. Grant drove his foot to the floor. The tunnel was featureless except for the occasional air vent above, shaded to protect against rainfall, and thus permitting little light to enter. But he noticed that there were crusty white animal droppings in many places. Obviously lots of animals had been here. Sitting beside him in the car, Lex shone the flashlight to the back where the velociraptor lay. Why is he having trouble breathing? Because I shot it with a tranquilizer, he said. Is it going to die? She said. I hope not. Why are we taking it? Lex said. To prove to people back to the center that the dinosaurs are really breeding, Grant said. How do you know they're breeding? Because this one's young, and because it's a boy dinosaur. Is it? Lex said, peering along the flashlight beam. Yes. Now shine the light forward, will you? He held out his wrist, turning the watch to her. What does it say? It says 10:15. Okay, Tim said. That means we only have 45 minutes to contact the boat. We should be close. I figure we should be almost at the visitor center right now. He wasn't sure, but he sensed the tunnel was gently tipping upward, leading them back to the surface, and wow, Tim said. They burst out into daylight with shocking speed. There was a light mist blowing, partially obscuring the building that loomed directly above them. Grant saw at once that it was the visitor center. They had arrived right in front of the garage. Yay, Lex shouted. Ow. That doesn't help my hearing. We did it! Yay! She bounced up and down in the seat as Grant parked the car in the garage. Along one wall was stacked with animal cages. They put the Velociraptor in one with a dish of water. Then they started climbing the stairs to the ground floor entrance of the visitor center. I'm going to get a hamburger and french fries, chocolate milkshake, no more dinosaurs. Yay! They came into the lobby and they opened the door. And they fell silent. Yes, Satan, thank you. Right, I am getting incredibly close to it, so I might just, unfortunately, it's going to drop a bit. I might turn off the gain, because I'm going to keep getting a bit close. Good evening. In the lobby of the visitor center, the glass doors had been shattered, and a cold grey mist blew through the cavernous main hall. A sign that read, "When dinosaurs ruled the earth," dangled from one hinge, creaking in the wind. The big Tyrannosaur robot was upended and lay with its legs in the air, its tubing and metal innards exposed. Outside, through the glass, they saw a row of palm trees, shadowy shapes in the fog. Tim and Lex huddled against the metal desk of the security guard. Grant took the guard's radio and tried all the channels. Hello? This is Grant. Is anybody there? Hello? This is Grant. Lex stared at the body on the ground, lying on the floor. She couldn't see anything but its legs and feet. Hello? This is Grant. Hello? Lex was leaning forward, peering around the edge. Grant grabbed her sleeve. Hey, stop that. Is he dead? What's the stuff on the floor? Blood? Yes. How come it isn't red? You're morbid, Tim said. What's morbid? I'm not. The radio crackled. My God, came a voice. Grant, is that you? And then Alan? Alan? It was Ellie. I'm here, Grant said. Thank God, Ellie said. Are you all right? I'm all right, yes. What about the kids? Have you seen them? I have the kids with me. They're okay. Thank God. Lex was crawling around the side of the desk. Grant slapped her ankle. Get back here. The radio crackled. Where are you? In the lobby. The lobby of the main building. Oh, my God. They're here. Alan, listen. The raptors have gotten loose. They can open doors. They may be in the same building as you. Great. Where are you? We're in the lodge. And the others? Muldoon, everybody else? We've lost a few people, but we've got everyone else over to the lodge. And the telephone's working. No, the whole system is shut off. Nothing works. How do we get the system back on? We've been trying. We have to get it back on right away. If we don't, within half an hour, the raptors will reach the mainland. He started to explain about the boat when Muldoon cut him off. I don't think you understand, Dr. Grant. We haven't got half an hour left over here. How's that? Some of the raptors follow us. We've got 2 on the roof right now. So what? The building's impregnable. Apparently not. It was never expected the animals would get up on the roof. The radio crackled. Must have planted a tree too close to the fence. The raptors got over the fence and onto the roof. Anyway, the steel bars on the skylight were supposed to be electrified, but of course, the power was off. They're biting through the bars of the skylight. Biting through the bars? He frowned, trying to imagine it. How fast? Yep. Muldoon said they have the bite pressure of 15,000 pounds per square inch. They're like hyenas. They can bite through steel and... The transmission was lost for a moment. How fast? Grant said. I guess we've got another 10-15 minutes before they break through completely and come through the skylight into the building. And once they're in... just a minute, Dr. Grant. The radio clicked off. In the skylight above Malcolm's bed, the raptors had chewed through the first of the steel bars. One raptor gripped the end of the bar and tugged, pulling it back. It put its powerful hind limb on the skylight and the glass shattered, glittering down on Malcolm's bed below. Ellie reached over and removed the largest fragments from the sheets. God, they're ugly, Malcolm said, looking up. Now that the glass was broken, they could hear the snorts and snarls of the raptors, the squeal of their teeth on metal as it chewed through the bars. There were silver-thin sections where they had chewed. Foamy saliva spattered onto the sheets and the bedside table. At least they can't get in yet. Not until they chew through another bar. If Grant could somehow get to the maintenance shed... Bloody hell, Muldoon said. He limped around the room with a sprained ankle. You can't get there fast enough. You can't get the power on fast enough. Not to stop this. Malcolm coughed. Yes. His voice was soft, almost a wheeze. What did he say? Malcolm said. Yes. Can what? Distraction, he winced. What kind of distraction? Go to the fence. Yeah, and do what? Stick your hands through. Oh, Christ, Muldoon said, turning away. Wait a minute, Lou said. He's right. There's only 2 raptors here, which means there are at least 4 more out there. They could go out and provide a distraction. And then what? And then Grant would be free to go to the maintenance building and turn on the generator. And then go back to the control room and start up the system. Exactly. No time, Muldoon said. No time. But if we can lure the raptors down here, maybe even get them away from that skylight, it might work. It's worth a try. Bait, Muldoon said. Exactly. Who's going to be bait? I'm no good. My ankle's shot. I'll do it. No. You're the only one who knows what to do about the computer. You need to talk to Grant through the startup. Then I'll do it, Harding said. Nope. Nellie said. Malcolm needs you. I'll do it. Hell, I don't think so. You'd have raptors all around you, raptors on the roof, but she was already bending over, lacing up her running shoes. Just don't tell Grant. It will make him nervous. The lobby was quiet. Chilly fog drifting past them. The radio had been silent for several minutes. Tim said, why aren't they talking to us? I'm hungry, Lake said. They're trying to plan, Grant said. Grant, are you there? Wu speaking. Are you there? I'm here, Grant said. Listen, can you see to the rear of the visitors' building from where you are? Grant looked through the rear glass doors to the palm trees in the fog. Yes, Grant said. Wu said there's a path. Straight through the palm trees to the maintenance building. That's where the power equipment and generators are. I believe you saw the maintenance buildings yesterday? Yes, Grant said. Though he was momentarily puzzled. Was it yesterday he looked into this building? It seemed like years ago. Now listen. We think we can get all the raptors down here by the lodge, but we aren't sure, so be careful. Give us 5 minutes. Okay, you can leave the kids in the cafeteria. They should be alright. Take the radio with you when you go. Turn it off before you leave so it doesn't make any noise outside, and call me when you get to the maintenance shed. Okay. Grant turned the radio off. Lex crawled back. Are we going to the cafeteria? She said. Yes. Grant said. They got up and started walking through the mist in the lobby. I want a hamburger, Lex said. I don't think there's any electricity to cook with. Then ice cream. Tim, you'll have to stay with her and help her. I will. I've got to leave for a while, Grant said. I know. They moved to the cafeteria entrance. On opening the door, Grant saw square dining tables and chairs, swinging stainless steel doors beyond, nearby a cash register and a rack with gum and candy. Okay, kids, I want you to stay here no matter what. Got it? Leave us the radio? Lex said. I can't. I need it. Just stay here. I'll only be gone 5 minutes, okay? Okay. Grant closed the door. The cafeteria became completely dark. Lex clutched his hand. Turn on the lights. I can't. There's no electricity. But he pulled down the night vision goggles. That's fine for you. What about me? Just hold my hand. We'll get some food. He led her forward. In phosphorescent green, he saw the tables and chairs. To the right, the glowing green cash register and the rack of gum and candy. He grabbed a handful of candy bars. I told you, I want ice cream, not candy. Take these anyway. Ice cream, Tim. Okay, okay. Tim stuffed the candy bars in his pocket and led Lex deep into the dining room. She tugged on his hand. I can't see spit, she said. Just walk with me, hold my hand. Then slow down. Beyond the tables and chairs were a pair of swinging doors with little round windows in them. They probably led to the kitchen. He pushed one door open and held it wide. Lurking while I was a dirty van by the river. While? Do you mean like? Like I was a dirty van by the river? Or what? Have you become a van? Congrats on becoming a van. Wash. Ah. That makes a bit more sense. But congrats on becoming a van. Very proud. Good look, you know. Good times, good vibes. Becoming a van. Iconic. Thanks, Mom. Oh, you're welcome, sweetie. I need to get comfy in this chair again. Oh. That's a bad... Fuck, where's the band one? Are you the band one?
Well, that was fucking dreadful.
Yeah, it is. You fucked. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. I expect that shit from Nathan. Not from you. Ellie Sattler stepped outside the front door to the lodge and felt its chilly mist on her legs and face. Her heart was thumping, even though she knew she was completely safe behind the fence. Directly ahead, she saw the heavy bars in the fog, but she couldn't see much beyond the fence. Another 20 yards, and before the landscape turned into milky white. She didn't see any of the raptors at all. In fact, the gardens and the trees were almost silent. "Hey!" she shouted into the fog. Muldoon leaned against the doorframe. "I doubt that would do it. You've got to make a noise." He hobbled out carrying a steel rod from the construction inside. He banged the rod against the bars like dinner gong. "Come and get it. Dinner is served." "They don't. Very amusing," Elise said. She glanced nervously towards the roof. She saw no raptors. "They don't understand English, but I imagine they get the general idea." She was still nervous. Found his humour annoying. She looked toward the visitor building, cloaked in fog. Muldoon received banging on the bars. At the limit of her vision, almost lost in the fog, she saw a ghostly pale animal. A raptor. "First customer," Muldoon said. The raptor disappeared, a white shadow, and then came back, but it did not approach any closer. It seemed strangely incurious about the noise coming from the lodge. She was starting to worry. Unless she could track the raptors from the lodge, Grant would be in danger. "You're making too much noise," Ellie said. "Bloody hell," Muldoon said. "Well, you are. I know these animals. You're drunk," she said. "Let me handle it." "And how will you do that?" She didn't answer him. She went to the gate. "They say raptors are intelligent." "They are, at least intelligent as chimps. They have good hearing." "Excellent. Maybe they'll know this sound," she said, and opened the gate. The metal hinges, rusted from the constant mist, creaked loudly. She closed it again and opened it with another creak. She left it open. "I wouldn't do that," Muldoon said. "You're going to do that. Let me get the launcher." "Get to the launcher." He sighed, remembering. "Gennaro has the shells." "Well then, keep an eye out." And she went through the gate, stepping outside the bars. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely feel her feet on the dirt. She moved away from the fence and it disappeared frighteningly fast in the fog. Soon it was lost behind her. Just as she expected, Muldoon began shouting to her in drunken agitation. "God damn it, girl, don't do that," he bellowed. "Don't call me girl," she shouted back. "I'll call you any damn thing I want," Muldoon shouted. She wasn't listening. She was turning slowly, her body tense. I'll reply to him in a bit. This is why I need to turn this thing on fucking Do Not Disturb. And it only just went off Do Not Disturb today. She stayed away from the foliage. She moved through a world of shades of grey. The muscles in her leg and shoulders ached from the tension her eyes strained to see. "Do you hear me, damn it?" Muldoon bellowed. How good are these animals, she wondered. Good enough to cut off my retreat? There wasn't much distance back to the fence, not they attacked. There was no sound. The first animal charged from the foliage at the base of the tree to the left. It sprang forward and she turned to run. The second attacked from the other side, clearly intending to catch her as she ran, and it leapt in the air, claws raised to attack, and she darted like a broken field runner. And the animal crashed down in the dirt. Now she was running flat out, not daring to look back, her breath coming in deep gasps. Seeing the bars of the fence emerge from the haze, seeing Muldoon throw the gate wide, seeing him reaching for her, shouting to her, grabbing her arm and pulling her through so hard she was yanked off her feet and fell to the ground. And she turned in time not to see one, but two, but three hit the fence and snarl. It's my favourite one. I fucking love it. "Good work," Muldoon shouted. He was taunting the animals now, snarling back, and it drove them wild. They flung themselves at the fence, leaping forward, and one of them nearly made it over the top. Christ, that was close. Bastards can jump. She got to her feet, looking at the scrapes and bruises, the blood running down her leg. All she could think of. 3 animals here, 2 on the roof. That meant 1 was still missing. Come on, help me. Let's keep him interested. Grant left the visitor centre and moved quickly forward, into the mist. He found the path among the palm trees and followed it up north. Up ahead, the rectangular maintenance shed emerged from the fog. There was no door that he could see at all. He walked on around the corner. At the back Screened by planting, Grant saw a concrete loading dock for trucks. He scrambled up to face a vertical rolling door of corrugated steel. It was locked. He jumped down again and continued around the building. Farther ahead, to his right, Grant saw an ordinary door. It was propped open with a man's shoe. Grant stepped inside and squinted in the darkness. He listened, heard nothing, picked up the radio, turned it on. This is Grant. I'm inside. Wu looked up at the skylight. The two raptors peered down into Malcolm's room, but they seemed distracted by noises outside. He went to the lodge window. Outside, 3 raptors continued to charge the fence. Eddie was running back and forth safely behind the bars, but the raptors no longer seemed to be seriously trying to get her. Now they almost seemed to be playing. Circling back from the fence, rearing up and snarling, then dropping down low to circle again and finally charge. This behaviour had been their behaviour had taken on the distinct quality of display rather than serious attack. Like birds, Muldoon said, putting on a show. Wu nodded. They're intelligent. They see they can't get her. They're not really trying. The radio crackled. Side? Wu gripped the radio. Say again, Dr. Grant? I'm inside. Dr. Grant, you're in the maintenance building. Yes, Grant said. Maybe you should call me Alan. All right, Alan. If you're standing just inside the east doors, you'll see lots of pipes and tubing. Straight ahead is a big recessed wall. In the centre of the building that goes 2 stories underground. To your left is a metal walkway with railings. I see it. Go along the walkway. I'm going. Faintly, the radio carried the clang of his footsteps on metal. After you go 20 or 30 feet, you will see another walkway right ahead. I see it, Grant said. Follow that walkway. Okay. As you continue, Wu said, you will come to a ladder on your left, going down into a pit. I see it. Go down the ladder. There was a long pause. Wu ran his fingers through his damp hair. Muldoon frowned tensely. Okay, I'm going down the ladder. Good, Wu said. Now straight ahead of you should be 2 large yellow tanks marked flammable. They say inflammable, and there's something underneath in Spanish. Those are the ones. Those are the 2 fuel tanks for the generator. One of them has been run dry, so we have to switch over to the other. If you look at the bottom of the tank, you'll see a white pipe coming out. 4-inch PVC? Yes, PVC. Follow the pipe as it goes back. Okay, I'm following it. How? What happened? Nothing, I hit my head. Are you alright? Yeah, just hurt my head. Stupid. Keep following the pipe. Okay. He sounded irritable. Okay, the pipe goes to the big aluminum box with air vents to the sides. It says Honda. It looks like a generator. Yes, that's the generator. If you walk around to the side, you'll see a panel with 2 buttons. I see them. Yellow and red. That's right. Press the yellow one first, and then while you hold it down, press the red one. Right. There was another pause. It lasted almost a minute. Wu and Muldoon looked at each other. Alan? Didn't work, Grant said. Did you hold the yellow first and press the red? Yes, I did, Grant said. He sounded annoyed. I did exactly what you told me to do. There was a hum and then a click. Click. Very fast, then the hum stopped and nothing. Try it again. I already did. It didn't work. Okay, just a minute. It sounds like the generator is trying to fire up, but it can't for some reason. Alan, I'm here. Go around the back of the generator to where the plastic pipe runs in. Okay. A pause, then Grant said. The pipe goes into a round black cylinder that looks like a fuel pump. That's right. That's exactly what it is. It's a fuel pump. Look for a little valve on the top. A valve? It should be sticking up at the top with a little metal tab that you can turn. I found it, but it's on its side, not the top. Okay, twist it open. Air is coming out. Good, wait until... Now liquid is coming out. It smells like gas. Okay, close the valve. Wu turned to Muldoon, shaking his head. Pump lost its prime? Alan, yeah? Try the buttons again. A moment later, Wu heard the faint coughing and sputtering as the generator turned over, then a steady chugging as soon as it caught on. It's on, Grant said. Good work, Alan, good work. Now what? Grant said. The lights haven't even come back on. Go back to the control room and I'll talk you through restoring the systems manually. That's what I have to do now? Yes. I'll call you when I get there. There was a final hiss and silence. Alan? The radio was dead. Tim went through the swinging doors at the back of the dining room and entered the kitchen. A big stainless steel table in the centre of the room. A big stove with lots of burners to the left, and beyond that, a big walk-in refrigerators. Tim started opening the refrigerators looking for ice cream. Smoke came out in the humid air as he opened each one. How come the stove is on? It's not on. They all have little blue flames. Those are pilot lights. What are pilot lights? They're an electric stove at home. Never mind, Tim said, opening another refrigerator. But it means I can cook you something. In the next refrigerator, he found all kinds of stuff. Cans of milk and piles of vegetables and a stack of T-bone steaks. Fish, but no ice cream. You still want ice cream? I told you, did I? The next refrigerator was huge. A stainless steel door with a wide horizontal handle. He tugged at the handle, pulled it open, and saw a walk-in freezer. It was a whole room and it was freezing cold. Timmy, will you wait a minute? He said, annoyed. I'm trying to find your ice cream. Timmy, something's here. She was whispering. For a moment, the last two words didn't register. Then Tim hurried back out of the freezer. Seeing the edge of the door wreathed in green glowing smoke, Lex stood by the steel work table. She was looking back at the kitchen door. He heard a low hissing sound, like a very large snake. The sound rose and fell softly. It was hardly audible. It might be the wind, but he somehow knew it wasn't. Timmy, I'm scared. He crept forward to the kitchen door and looked out. In the darkened dining room, he saw the orderly green rectangular pattern of the tabletops, and moving smoothly among them, silent as a ghost, except for the hissing of its breath, was a velociraptor. In the darkness of the maintenance room, Grant felt along the pipes, moving back to the ladder. It was difficult to make his way in the dark, and somehow he found the noise of the generator disorientating. He came to the ladder, and he'd started back up when he realized there was something else in the room. Beside the generator. Grant paused, listening. It was a man shouting. It sounded like Gennaro. Where are you? Grant shouted back. Over here. In the truck. Grant couldn't see any truck. He squinted in the darkness. He looked around the corner. He saw green glowing shapes moving in the darkness. Then he saw the truck and turned toward it. Gennaro, my love. Tim found the silence chilling. The velociraptor was 6 feet tall and powerfully built, and although its strong legs and tail were hidden by tables, Tim could see only the muscular upper torso, the two forearms held tightly alongside its body, the claws dangling. He could see the iridescent speckled pattern on the back. The velociraptor was alert. As it came forward, it looked from side to side, moving its head with abrupt bird-like jerks. The head also bobbed up and down when it walked, and the long straight tail dipped, which heightened the impression of a bird, a gigantic, silent bird of prey. The dining room was dark, but apparently the raptor could see well enough to move steadily forward. From time to time it would bend over, lowering its head between the tables. Tim heard a rapid sniffing, then his head would snap up alertly, jerking back and forth like a bird's. Tim watched till he was sure the velociraptor was coming towards the kitchen. Was it following their scent? All the books said dinosaurs had poor sense of smell. But this one seemed to do just fine. Anyway, what did books know? It was the real thing, coming toward them. He darted back into the kitchen. There's something out there, Lex said. Tim didn't answer. He pushed her under a table in the corner, behind a large waste bin. He leaned close to her and whispered, "Stay here." He then ran for the refrigerator. He grabbed a handful of cold steaks and hurried back to the door. He quietly placed the first of the steaks on the floor, then moved back a few steps, put down a second. Through his goggles, he saw Lex peeping around the bin. He waved her back. He placed the third steak and the fourth, moving deeper into the kitchen. The hissing was louder, and then the clawed hand gripped the door, and the big head peered cautiously around. The velociraptor paused at the entrance of the kitchen. Tim stood in a half crouch at the back of the room near the far leg of the steel work table. But he had not had time to conceal himself. His head and shoulders were still protruded over the table. He was in clear view of the velociraptor. Tim slowly lowered his body, sinking beneath the table. The velociraptor jerked his head around, looking directly at Tim. Tim froze. He was still exposed. But he thought, don't move. The velociraptor stood motionless in the doorway, sniffing. It's darker here, Tim thought. He can't see so well. It's making him cautious. But now he could smell the musty odor of the big reptile, and through his goggles he saw the dinosaur silently yawn, throwing back its long snout, exposing rows of razor-sharp teeth. The velociraptor stared forward, jerking its head from side to side. The big eyes swiveled in the bony sockets. Tim felt his heart pounding. Somehow it was worse to be confronted by an animal like this in a kitchen, instead of open forest. The size, the quick movements, the pungent odour, the hissing breath. Up close it was a much more frightening animal than the Tyrannosaur. The Tyrannosaur was huge and powerful, but it wasn't especially smart. The Velociraptor was man-sized, and it was quick and intelligent. Tim feared the searching eyes almost as much as the sharp teeth. The Velociraptor sniffed. It stepped forward, moving directly towards Lex. It must smell her somehow. Tim's heart thumped. The Velociraptor stopped. It bent over slowly. He found the steak. Tim wanted to bend down to look below the table, but he didn't dare move. He stood frozen in a half crouch, listening to the crunching sound. The dinosaur was eating it, bones and all. The raptor raised its slender head and looked around. It sniffed. It saw the second steak, and it moved quickly forward and as it bent down. Silence. The raptor didn't eat it. The head came back up. Tim's legs burned from the crouch, but he didn't move. Why hadn't the animal eaten the second steak? A dozen ideas flashed through his mind. It didn't taste like beef. It didn't taste like coldness. It didn't like the fact that the meat wasn't alive. It smelled a trap. It smelled Lex. It smelled Tim. It saw Tim. The Velociraptor moved very quickly. It found the third steak, dipped its head, looked up again, and moved on. Tim held his breath. The dinosaur was now just a few feet from him. Tim could see the small twitches in the muscles of the flanks. He could see the crusted blood on the claws of its hand. He could see the fine pattern of striations within the spotted pattern, and the folds of his skin in the neck below the jaw. The Velociraptor sniffed. It jerked its head and looked right at Tim. Tim nearly gasped with fright. Tim's body was rigid and tense. He watched as the reptile eye moved, scanning the room. Another sniff. He's got me, Tim thought. Then the head jerked back to look forward, and the animal went toward the fifth steak. Tim thought, Lex, please don't move, please don't. Whatever you do, do not move. The Velociraptor sniffed the steak and moved on. It was now at the open door to the freezer. Tim could see the smoke billowing out, curling around the floor toward the animal's feet. One big claw foot lifted, then came down again. Silently, the dinosaur hesitated. Too cold, Tim thought. He won't go in there, it's too cold. He won't go in. He won't go in. He won't go in. The dinosaur went in. The head disappeared, then the body, then the stiff tail. Tim sprinted, flinging his weight against the stainless steel door of the locker, slamming it shut. It slammed on the tip of the tail. The door wouldn't shut. The Velociraptor roared a terrifying loud sound. Inadvertently, Tim took a step back. The tail was gone. He slammed the door shut and heard it click. Closed. Lex! Lex! He was screaming. He heard the raptor pounding against the door, felt it thumping the steel. He knew there was a flat steel knob inside, and if the raptor hit that, it would knock the door open. They had to get the door locked. Lex! Lex was by a sound. What do you want? Tim leaned against the horizontal door panel, holding it in. There's a pin. Little pin. Get the pin. The Velociraptor roared like a lion, the sound muffled by thick steel. It crashed its whole body against the door. I can't see anything, Lex shouted. The pin was dangling beneath the door handle, swinging on a little metal chain. It's right there. I can't see it, she screamed, then Tim realized she wasn't wearing the goggles. Feel for it. He saw a little hand reach up, touching his, groping for the pin, and with her so close to him, he could feel how frightened she was. Her breath in little panicky gasps as she felt for the pin, and the Velociraptor slammed against the door and opened. God, it opened. But the animal hadn't expected that, and had turned back for another try. Tim slammed the door shut again. Lex scrambled back and reached up in the darkness. I have it, Lex cried, clutching the pin in her hand, and she pushed it through the hole. Slid out again. From the top. Put it in from the top. She held it again, lifting it off the chain, swinging it over the handle and down into the hole. Locked. The Velociraptor roared. Tim and Lex stepped back from the door as the dinosaur slammed it again. With each impact, the heavy steel wall's hinges creaked, but they held. Tim didn't think that the animal could possibly open the door. The raptor was locked in. He gave a long sigh. Let's go, he said. He took her hand and they ran. You should have seen them, Gennari said as Grant led him back out of the maintenance building. There must have been 24 of them. Compies. I had to crawl into the truck to get away from them. They were all over the windshield, just squatting there, waiting like buzzards. But they ran away when you came over. Scavengers. They won't attack anything that's moving or looks strong. They attack things that are dead or almost dead. Anyway, unmoving. They were going up the ladder now, back toward the entrance. What happened to the raptor that attacked you? I don't know, Janara said. Did it leave? I didn't see. I got away, I think because it was injured. I think Muldoon shot it in the leg and it was bleeding while it was there. Then, I don't know, maybe it went back outside. Maybe it died in here. I didn't see. Or maybe it's still in here, Grant said. Wu stared out the lodge window at the raptors beyond the fence. They still seemed playful, making mock attacks at Ellie. The behaviour had continued for a long time now, and it occurred to him it might be too long. It almost seemed as if they were trying to keep Ellie's attention in the same way she was trying to keep theirs. The behaviour of the dinosaurs had always been a minor consideration for Wu, and rightly so. Behaviour was a second-order effect of DNA, like protein unfolding. You couldn't really predict behaviour, and you couldn't really control it, except in very crude ways, like making an animal dependent on a dietary substance by withholding an enzyme. But in general, behavioural effects were simply beyond the reach of understanding. You couldn't look at a DNA sequence and predict behaviour. It was impossible. And that had made Wu's DNA work purely empirical. It was a matter of tinkering. The way a modern workman might repair an antique grandfather clock. You were dealing with something out of the past, something constructed of ancient materials and following ancient rules. You couldn't be certain why it worked as it did, and it had been repaired and modified many times, already by forces of evolution over eons of time. So like the workman who makes an adjustment and then sees if the clock works any better, Wu made an adjustment and then see if the animals behaved any better. But only he tried to correct gross behaviour, uncontrolled butting of electrical fences, and rubbing the skin raw on tree trunks. Those behaviours that sent him back to the drawing board. And the limits of science had left him with a mysterious feeling about the dinosaurs in the park. He was never really sure about it all, whether the behaviour of the animals was historically accurate or not. Were they behaving as they had in the past? It was an open question, ultimately unanswerable. And though Wu would never admit it, the discovery that dinosaurs were breeding represented a tremendous validation of his work. A breeding animal was demonstrably effective in a fundamental way. It implied that Wu had put all the pieces together correctly. He had recreated an animal from millions of years old, with such precision that the creature could even reproduce on its own. But still, looking at the raptors outside, he was troubled by the persistence of their behaviour. Raptors were intelligent, and intelligent animals got bored quickly. Intelligent animals also formed plans, and Harding came out into the hallway from Malcolm's rooms. Where's Ellie? Still outside. Better get her in here. The raptors have left the skylight. When? Just a moment ago, Harding said. Wu threw open the front door. Ellie, inside, now. She looked over at him, puzzled. There's no problem. Everything's like, now. She shook her head. I know what I'm doing. Ellie, now, damn it. Muldoon didn't like Wu standing there with the door open, and we was about to say so when he saw a shadow descend from above, and he realised what had happened. Wu was yanked bodily out of the door, and Muldoon heard Ellie screaming. Muldoon got to the door and looked out and saw that Wu was lying on his back, his body already being torn apart by the big claw, and the raptors was jerking its head, tugging at Wu's intestines even though Wu was still alive, still feelably reaching up with his hands to push away the big head. He was being eaten while he was still alive. And then Ellie stopped screaming and started to run along the inside of the fence, and Muldoon slammed the door shut, dizzy with horror. It happened so fast. Harding said he jumped down from the roof. Muldoon said he went to the window and looked out, and he saw 3 raptors outside the fence were now running away, but they weren't following Ellie. They were going back to the visitor centre. Grant came to the edge of the maintenance building and peered forward in the fog. He could hear the snarls of the raptors, and they seemed to be coming closer. Now he could see their bodies running past him. They were going to the visitor centre. He looked back at Gennaro. Gennaro shook his head, no. Grant leaned close and whispered in his ear, no choice. We've got to turn on the computer. Grant set out in the fog, and after a moment, Gennaro followed. Honestly, Wu's death is one of those ones where you're like, hey, he's funny. Oh, no, his intestines are out. Oh, yeah, all right, cool. Anyway, this is what you get for playing God. Ellie didn't stop to think. When the raptors dropped inside the fence to attack Wu, she just turned and ran as fast as she could toward the far end of the lodge. There was a space 15 feet wide between the fence and the lodge. She ran, not hearing the animals pursuing her, just hearing her own breath. She rounded the corner, saw a tree growing by the side of the building, leapt, grabbed a branch, swinging up. She didn't feel panic. She felt a kind of exhilaration as she kicked and saw her legs rise in front of her face, and she hooked her leg over a branch further up, tightened her gut, and pulled up quickly. She was already 12 feet off the ground, and the raptors still weren't following her. She was beginning to feel pretty good when she saw the first animal at the base of the tree. Its mouth was bloody, and bits of stringy flesh hung from its jaws. She continued to go up, hand over hand, just reaching and going, and she could almost see the top of the building. She looked down. The 2 raptors were climbing the tree. Now she was at the level of the rooftop. She could see the gravel only 4 feet away, and the glass pyramids of the skylights sticking into the mist. There was a door on the roof. She could get inside. In a single heaving effort, she flung herself through the air and landed sprawling on the gravel. She scraped her face, but somehow the only sensation was exhilaration, as if it was some kind of game she was playing, a game she intended to win. She ran for the door that led to the stairs. Behind her, she could hear the raptors shaking the branches of the tree. They were still in the tree. She reached through the door and twisted the knob. The door was locked. It took a moment for that meaning to cut through her, the euphoria. The door was locked. She was on a roof. She couldn't get down. The door was locked. She pounded on the door in frustration, and then she ran to the far side of the roof, hoping to see a way down. But there was only the green outline of the swimming pool through the blowing mist. All around the pool was concrete decking, 10 feet concrete. Too much for her to jump across. No other trees to climb down, no stairs, no fire escape. Nothing. Ellie turned back and saw the raptors jumping easily to the roof. She ran to the far end of the building, hoping there might be another door, but there wasn't. The raptors came slowly toward her, stalking her, slipping silently among the glass pyramids. She looked down. The edge of the pool was 10 feet away. The raptors were closer, starting to move apart, and illogically she thought, isn't this always the way? Some little mistake screws it all up. She still felt giddy, still felt exhilaration, and she somehow couldn't believe these animals were going to get her. She couldn't believe that now in her life was going to end like this. It didn't seem possible. She was enveloped in the kind of protective cheerfulness. She just didn't believe it would happen. Then the raptors snarled. Ellie backed away, moving to the far end of the roof. She took a breath, and she began to sprint toward the edge. And she raced towards the edge. She saw the swimming pool, and she knew it was too far, and she thought, what the hell? Leapt into space and fell. And with a stinging shock, she felt herself enveloped in coldness. She was underwater. She'd done it. She came to the surface and looked up at the roof and saw the raptors looking down at her. And she knew if she could do it, the raptors could do it too. She splashed in the water and thought, can raptors swim? She was sure they could. They probably swim like crocodiles. The raptors turned away from the edge of the roof, and then she heard Harding calling Sattler. She realized he had opened the door. The raptors were going toward him. Hurriedly, she climbed out of the pool and ran towards the lodge. Harding had gone up to the stairs at the roof too at the time, and he flung the door open without thinking. Sattler! He shouted, and then he stopped. Mist blew among the pyramids, and the raptors were not in sight. Sattler! He was so preoccupied with Sattler thinking in the moment before he realized his mistake. He should be able to see the animals, he thought. In the next instant, the clawed forearm smashed around the door, catching him in the chest with a tearing pain. And it took all his effort to pull himself backwards and close the door on the arm, and from downstairs he heard Muldoon shouting, She's here! She's already inside! From the other side of the door, the raptor snarled, and Harding slammed the door again, and the claws pulled back and he closed the door with a metallic clang and sank coughing to the floor. Where are we going? Lex said. I know where we are now. They were on the second floor of the visitor centre. A glass-walled corridor ran the length of the building. To the control room, Tim said. Where's that? Down here someplace. Tim looked at the name stenciled on the door and went past him. These seemed to be offices. Park warden, guest services, general manager, controller. They came to a glass partition marked with a sign. Closed area. Authorised personnel. Only beyond this point. There was a slot for a security card, but Tim pushed the door open. How come it opened? The power's out, Tim said. Why were we going to the control room, she asked. To find a radio? We need to call someone. Beyond the glass door, the hallway continued. Tim remembered this area. He had seen it earlier during the tour. Lex trotted along at the side. In the distance, they heard snarling of raptors. The animals seemed to be approaching. Then Tim heard the slamming against the glass downstairs. They're out there, Lex whispered. Don't worry. What are they doing here? Lex said. Never mind now. Park supervisor, operations main control. Here, Tim said. He pushed the door open. The main control room was as he had seen it before. In the centre of the room was a console with 4 chairs and 4 computers. The room was entirely dark except for the monitors, which all showed a series of coloured rectangles. So where's the radio? But Tim had forgotten about the radio. He moved forward and staring at the computer screens. The screens were on. That could only mean the power's back on. Nick, Lex said, shifting her body. What? I was standing on somebody's ear, she said. Tim hadn't seen a body when they came in. He looked back and saw there was just an ear lying on the floor. That is really disgusting, Lex said. Never mind, he turned to the monitors. Where's the rest of him? She said. Never mind that now. He peered closely at the monitor. There were rows of coloured labels on the screen. Startup, security, blah, 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 blah. You get the fucking drift. You better not fool around with that, Timmy, she said. Don't worry, I won't. He'd seen complicated computers before, like the ones that were installed in the buildings his father worked on. Those computers controlled everything, from the elevators to the security to the heating to the cooling systems. They looked basically like this, a lot of coloured labels, but they were usually simpler to understand. And almost always there was a help label if you needed to learn about the system. But he saw no help label here. He looked again just to be sure. He then saw something else, numerals clicking in the upper left screen that read 10, 47, 22. Then Tim realised it was the time. There was only 13 minutes left for the boat. But he was more worried about the people in the lodge. There was a static crackle. He turned and saw Lex holding a radio. She was twisting knobs and dials. How does it work? I can't make it work. Give me that. I found it. It's mine. Give it to me, Lex. I get to use it first. Lex. Suddenly the radio crackled. What the hell is going on? Said Muldoon's voice. Surprised, Lex dropped the radio to the floor. Grant ducked back, crouching among the palm trees. Through the mist ahead, he could see the raptors hopping and snarling and butting their heads against the glass of the visitor centre. But between snarls, they would fall silent and cock their heads as if they were listening to something distant. And then they would make little whimpering sounds. What are they doing? Gennaro said. It looks like they're trying to get into the cafeteria. What's in the cafeteria? I left the kids there, Grant said. Can they break through the glass? I don't think so, no. Grant watched, and now he heard the crackle of a distant radio, and the raptors began hopping in a more agitated way. One after another, they began jumping higher and higher until he finally saw the first of them leap lightly onto the second-floor balcony, and from there move inside the second floor of the visitor centre. In the control room on the second floor, Tim snatched up the radio, which Lex had dropped. He pressed the button. Hello? Hello? Is that you, Tim? It was Muldoon's voice. It's me. Yes. Where are you? In the control room. The power is on. That's great, Tim. If someone would tell us how to turn it on, I'll do it. There was a silence. Hello? Did you hear me? We have a problem about that, Muldoon said. Nobody here who is here knows how to do that. How to turn the computer on. What, are you kidding? Nobody knows. Seemed incredible. No. I think there's something about main grid, turning on the main grid. Do you know anything about computers, Tim? Tim stared at the screen. Lex nudged him. Tell him no, Timmy. Yes, some. I know something. Might as well try, Muldoon said. Nobody here knows what to do, and Grant doesn't know about computers. Okay, Tim said. I'll try. He clicked off the radio and stared at the screen. Timmy, you don't know what to do. Yes, I do. If you know, then do it. It's such a sibling relationship. Like, beautiful. Just a minute. As a way to get started, he pulled the chair close to the keyboard and pressed the cursor keys. There were the keys that moved the cursor along the screen, but nothing happened. He pushed the other keys. The screen remained unchanged. Well, she said. Something's wrong, Tim said, frowning. You just don't know, Timmy, she said. He examined the computer again, looking at it carefully. The keyboard had a row of function keys at the top, just like a regular PC keyboard, and the monitor was big and in colour. But the monitor housing was sort of unusual. Tim looked to the edges of the screen and saw a lot of faint pinpoints of red light. He made sure the keyboard was plugged, didn't you fuck? Chubbs, thank you for the raid. Which one of these is a raid? Let's pretend it's this one. Nah, it's a Spino. That's my bad. You can have a Spino instead. Oh, it's this one that says raid. I was close. It's fucking close. I was way off, but I was really fucking close. My favourite lie, it's not much left. Everybody's dying. I hope you had a good. I hope you had a good time being a van. You know, services can absolutely kick rocks. Oh God. You mean to tell me the raid button is for rage? Shut up! I didn't realize. I saw that. I just forgot I actually had a raid button. You know, which has been shit today. Okay, mine seems to be somewhat alive, so I'll take that as a fucking win. But clearly, Twitch isn't coming for me because all I'm doing is reading a book about murder. So you know, ignore that this one's not a dinosaur. Hold on, hide it behind the book. The tea's cold. Shit, where the fuck was I? Why threw me off with this PC being plugged in bullshit? Oh, I see, it's not a no, what do you mean? It definitely is. Definitely. Red light. All around the borders of the screen. What could that be? He moved his finger toward the light and saw the soft red glow on his skin. He touched the screen and heard a beep. And again, more graphs. More graphs! You already have access. Make your selection from the main screen. That's how I'm just going to picture it. A moment later, the message box disappeared and the original screen flashed back up. I really hope. There's also, whole raids come in. Like right at the end of the book, people are dying. There's dinosaurs. If you haven't read Jurassic Park, treat yourself. What happened? Lex said. What did you do? You touched something. You didn't say the magic word. Again, that's another one I don't have. What might die?
Tastes like
It's
I
still
might
Roger.
die.
Just another version of Roger. I just have multiple versions of the one thing from Roger, and I have that one in the dinosaur one too. Interesting. Nice. I mean, true though. Of course, he thought. He touched the screen. It was touchscreen. The red lights around the edges must be infrared sensors. Tim had never seen such a screen, but he read about them in magazines. He touched reset, revert. Instantly, the screen changed. He got a new message. The computer is now reset. Make your selection from the main screen. Over the radio, they heard the sounds of raptors snarling. I want to see. You should try view. No, Lex. Well, I want view, she said. And before he could grab it, she pushed view. The screen changed. Again, graphs. Uh-oh, she said. Lex, will you cut it out? Look, she said. It worked. Around the room, the monitor showed quickly changing views of different parts of the park. Most of the images were misty grey because of the exterior fog, but one showed the outside of the lodge with a raptor on the roof, and then another switched to an image of in bright sunlight showing the bow of the ship. Bright sunlight? What was that? Tim said, leaning forward. What? The picture! But the image had already changed, and now they were seeing inside of the lodge, one room after another, and then they saw Malcolm lying in bed. Stop it, I see them, Lex said. Tim touched the screen in several places and got sub-menus, then more sub-menus. Wait, Lex said, you're confusing it. Will you shut up? You don't know anything about computers. Now he had a list of monitors on the screen. One of them was marked Safari Lodge, level 2 to 4. Another was Remote Shipboard. He pressed the screen several times. Video images came up on the monitors around the room. One showed the bow of the supply ship and the ocean ahead. In the distance, Tim saw land, buildings along the shore and a harbour. He recognised the harbour because he had flown over it in the helicopter the day before. It was Punta Arenas. The ship seemed to be just minutes from landing, but his attention was drawn by the next screen, which showed the roof of the Safari Lodge in grey mist. The raptors were mostly hidden behind the pyramids, but the heads bobbed up and down, coming into view. And then, on the third monitor, he could see inside a room. Malcolm was lying on the bed and Ellie stood next to him. They were both looking upward, and as they watched, Muldoon walked into the room and joined them, looking up with an expression. They don't see us. No, they see us, Lex said. I don't think so. The radio crackled. Hello, Tim? I'm here. We haven't got a whole lot of time. Better get that power grid on. And then Tim heard the raptor snarl and saw one of the long heads duck down through the glass, briefly entering the picture. Hurry, Timmy, get the power on. Lex, this isn't boring, you little shit. It's like she wants round 70 with the dinos. Legit. She's stupid. But this is, in the end, it becomes her who saves the day with the PC for the movies. Tim suddenly found himself lost in a tangled series of monitor control screens. As he tried to get back to the main screen, Most systems had a single button or a single command to return to the previous screen or to the main menu, but this system did not. Or at least he didn't know it. Also, he was certain that help commands had been built into the system, but he couldn't find them either. And Lex was jumping up and down, shouting in his ear, making him nervous. Finally got to the main screen back. He wasn't sure what he'd done, but it was back. He paused, looking for a command. "Do something, Timmy. Will you shut up? I'm trying to help." He pushed the template main. The screen filled with a complicated diagram with interconnecting boxes and arrows. No good, no good. He pushed common interface. The screen shifted. More graphs. "What's that?" Lex said. "Why aren't you turning on the power, Timmy?" He ignored her. Maybe help on the system was called info. He pushed info. Info. It was like Jurassic Park. Blah, 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 blah. Dennis Nedry. Dead. Timmy! Lex wailed, but he'd already pushed find. He got another useless window. He pushed back. Go back, go back, go back. On the radio, I heard Muldoon say, "How's coming, Tim?" He didn't bother to answer. Frantic, he was pushing buttons. Suddenly, without warning, the main screen was back. He studied the screen. Electrical main and set grids DNL. Both looked like they might have something to do with the grids. He noticed the safety, health, and critical logs might be important too. He heard the growl of the raptors. He had to make a choice. He pressed set grids and groaned with what he saw. He didn't know what to do. He pushed standard parameters. Tim shook his head in frustration. There's just even more graphs. It took a moment to realise that he'd just got invaluable information. Now he knew the grid coordinates for the lodge. He pushed F4. Power grid, F4, Safari Lodge, command cannot be executed, error, blah, blah, blah. "It's not working," Lex said. "I know," he pushed another button. I love how the text is in a whole different fucking format just for this one bit of dialogue. Tim tried to stay calm, to think it through. For some reason, he was getting a constant error message whenever he tried to turn on the grid. It says the power was incompatible with the command he was giving. But what does that mean? Why was the power incompatible? I want to see the pictures. Why are we looking at pictures? Turn the power on. God, Lex, make up your mind. Timmy, Lex said, tugging his arm. "Not now, Lex." "Yes, now," she said, and she pulled him away from the screen in the console. And then he heard the snarling of raptors. It was coming from the hallway. In the skylight above Malcolm's bed, the raptors had almost bitten through the second metal bar. They could now poke their heads entirely through the shattered glass and lunge and snarl at people below. Then after a moment, they would pull back and resume chewing on the metal. Malcolm said, "It won't be long now. 3, 4 minutes. He pushed the button on the radio. "Tim, you there? Tim?" There was no answer. We're getting closer. I don't like this. Tim slipped out of the door and saw the velociraptor down at the far end of the corridor, standing by the balcony. He stared in astonishment. How had it gotten out of the freezer? Then, as he watched, a second raptor suddenly appeared on the balcony, and he understood. The raptor hadn't come from the freezer, it had come from outside. It jumped from the ground below. The second raptor landed silently, perfectly, balancing on the railing. Tim couldn't believe it. The big animal had jumped 10 feet straight up. More than 10 feet. Their legs must be incredibly powerful. Lex whispered, "I thought you said they could..." Shh! Tim was trying to think. But he watched, with a kind of fascinated dread, as a third raptor leapt to the balcony. The animals milled aimlessly in the corridor for a moment, and then began to move forward in a single file, coming toward him and Lex. Quietly, Tim pushed against the door at his back to re-enter the control room, but the door was stuck. He pushed harder. "We're locked out. Look." She pointed to the slot for the security card alongside the door. A big red dot glowed. Somehow the security doors had been activated. "You idiot, you locked us out." Tim looked down the corridor. He saw several more doors, but each had red lights glowing alongside. That meant they were all locked. There was nowhere to go. Then he saw a slumped shape on the floor by the far end. It was a dead guard. A white security guard clipped to his belt. "Come on," he whispered. They ran for the guard. Tim got the card and turned back, but of course the raptors had seen them. They snarled and blocked the way back to the control room. They began to spread apart, fanning out in the hallway to surround Tim and Lex. Their heads began to duck rhythmically. They were going to attack. Tim did the only thing he could do. Using the card, he opened the nearest door of the hallway and pushed Lex through. As he began to close slowly behind them, the raptors hissed and charged. Lodge. Ian and Malcolm drew each breath as if it might be his last. He watched the raptors with dull eyes. Harding took his blood pressure, frowned, and took it again. Ellie Sattler was wrapped in a blanket, shivering and cold. Muldoon sat on the floor, propped against the wall. Hammond was staring upward, not speaking. They all listened to the radio. What happened to Tim? Hammond said. Still no word? I don't know. Malcolm said, ugly, aren't they? Truly ugly. Hammond shook his head. Who could have imagined it would turn out this way? Ellie said, apparently Malcolm did. I didn't imagine it, Malcolm said. I calculated it. Hammond sighed. No more of this, please. He's been saying I told you so for hours, but nobody ever wanted this to happen. It isn't a matter of wanting it or not, Malcolm said, eyes closed. He spoke slowly through the drugs. It's a matter of what you think you can accomplish. When the hunter goes out in the rainforest to seek food for his family, does he expect to control nature? No. He imagines that nature is beyond him, beyond his understanding, beyond his control. Maybe he prays to nature, to the facility of the forest that provides for him. He prays because he knows he doesn't control it. He's at mercy of it. But you decide you won't be at the mercy of nature. You decide you'll control nature. And from that moment on, you're in deep trouble because you can't do it. Yet you have made systems that require you to do it. And you can't do it. And you never have. And you never will. Don't confuse things. You can make a boat, but you can't make the ocean. You can make an airplane, but you can't make the air. Your powers are much less than your dreams of reason would have you believe. You lost me, Hammond said with a sigh. Where did Tim go? He seemed such a reasonable boy. I'm sure he's trying to get control of the situation. Like everybody else. And Grant, too. What happened to Grant? Grant reached the rear door of the visitor centre. The same door he'd left 20 minutes before. He tugged on the handle. It was locked. He saw the little red light. The security doors were activated. Damn! He ran through the front of the building, went through the shattered doors into the main lobby, stopping by the guard desk where he had left earlier. He could hear the dry hiss of the radio. He went to the kitchen looking for the kids, but the kitchen door was open, the kids were gone. He went upstairs, but came to the glass panel marked closed area, and the door was locked. He needed a security card to go further. Grant couldn't get in. From somewhere inside the hallway, he heard the raptors snarling. The leathery reptile skin touched Tim's face. The claws tore through his shirt, and Tim fell on his back, shrieking in fright. Timmy! Lex screamed. Tim scrambled to his feet again. The baby velociraptor perched on his shoulder, chirping and squeaking in panic. The raptors would be so much more effective if they just shut up for a bit. Legit, right? Tim and Lex were in the white nursery. There were toys on the floor, a rolling yellow ball, a doll, and a plastic rattle. It's the baby raptor, Lex said, pointing to the animal gripping Tim's shoulder. The little raptor burrowed its head in Tim's neck. The poor thing was probably starving, Tim thought. Lex came closer and the baby hopped onto her shoulder. It was rubbing against her neck. Why is it doing that? She said. Is it scared? I don't know, Tim said. She passed the raptor back to Tim. The baby was chirping and squeaking and hopping up and down on his shoulder excitedly. He kept looking around, head moving quickly. No doubt about it. The little thing was worked up and... Tim, Lex whispered. The door to the hallway hadn't closed behind them after they entered the nursery. Now the big velociraptors were coming through. The first one and then the second. Clearly agitated, the baby chirped and bounced on Tim's shoulder. Tim knew he had to get away. Maybe the baby would distract them. After all, it was a baby raptor. He plucked the little animal from his shoulder and threw it across the room. The baby scurried between the legs of the adult. First, raptor lowered its snout, sniffed the baby delicately. Tim took Lex's hand and pulled her deeper into the nursery. He had to find a door, a way to get out. There was a high, piercing shriek. Tim looked back to see the baby in the jaws of the adult. A second velociraptor came forward and tore at the limbs of the infant, trying to pull it from the mouth of the first. Two raptors fought over the baby as it squealed. Blood splattered in large drops onto the floor. They ate him. Lex said. The raptors fought over the remains of the baby, rearing back and butting heads. Tim found a door. It was unlocked, went through, pulling Lex after him. Do you now understand when I've always said there's a scene in this book I fucking hate? I was so fucking shook the first time I ever read it because I was expecting a getaway. Not with them tearing a baby in two. I fucking hate it. That's why as soon as it starts coming up, I know what's coming because it is so like, oh, this is really cute. Oh, he's really happy. Anyway, he's just been torn in two by two other raptors. It's awful. But I do love the fact that, yeah, just immediately you can realize that's the scene when I always talk about this book. And I will always talk about the baby raptor. This is why. We did all fuck. That's his own fault. He didn't get torn in two, and he had his face eaten. Torn in two, and then eaten. Nah, sorry. Fuck the baby. Look, who cares about human baby? This is a raptor. This is a raptor that was moving thing and playing with a rattle. Fuck the other baby. But that is when I first ever read this. I was like, oh, that's really cute. And then you get to the next page, it was like thing, and there was a high piercing skreek, and I just went, Like the first time I read it, I was just like, no, thank you. Nah. No, thank you. Not today. Not today. Fucking hate it. That's why I knew it was coming. As soon as I got to the control room, I was like, I know what's next. Ugh, I hate it. I can excuse human baby. Yeah, I can. I excuse human baby murder, but I draw the line at murdering a raptor. God. They were in another room, and from the deep green glow, he realized it was a deserted DNA extraction laboratory. The rows of stereo microscopes abandoned, the high-resolution screens showing frozen giant black and white images of insects, the flies and gnats that had bitten the dinosaurs millions of years ago, sucking the blood that now had been used to recreate dinosaurs in the park. They ran through the laboratory, and Tim could hear the snorts and snarls of the raptors, pursuing them, coming closer. And then he went to the back of the lab and through a door that must have had an alarm, because in a narrow corridor an intermittent siren sounded and the lights overhead flashed on and off. Running down the corridor, Tim was plunged into darkness. Then the light again, then darkness. Over the sound of the alarm, he heard the raptors snort as they pursued him. Lex was whimpering and moaning. Tim saw another door ahead with the blue biohazard sign. And he slammed into the door and moved beyond it, and suddenly he collided something with big, and Lex shrieked in terror. Take it easy, kids, the voice said. Tim blinked in disbelief. Standing above him was Dr. Grant, and next to him was Mr. Gennaro. Outside in the hallway, it had taken Grant nearly 2 minutes to realise that the dead guard down the lobby probably had a security guard. He'd gone back and gotten it and entered the upper corridor, moving quickly down the hallway. Gennaro, my love. He had followed the sounds of the raptors and found them fighting in the nursery. He was sure the kids would have gone to the next room, and he immediately ran to the extractions lab. And that's where he met the kids. Now the raptors were coming toward them. The animals seemed momentarily hesitant, surprised by the appearance of more people. Grant pushed the kids into Gennaro's arms and said, take them back to a safe place. But through there, Grant said, pointing over his shoulder to the far door. Take them to the control room if you can. You should all be safe there. Where are you going? The raptors stood near the door. Grant noticed that they waited until all the animals were together. Then they moved forward as a group. Pack hunters. He shivered. I have a plan, Grant said. Now go on. Gennaro led the kids away. The raptors continued slowly toward Grant, moving past the supercomputers, past the screens that still blinked endless sequences of computer-deciphered code. The raptors came forward without hesitation, sniffing the floor, repeatedly ducking their heads. Grant heard the door click behind him and glanced over his shoulder. Everyone was standing on the other side of the glass, watching him. Gennaro shook his head. Grant knew what it meant. There was no door to the control room beyond. Gennaro and the kids were trapped in there. It was up to him now. Grant moved slowly, edging around the laboratory, leading the raptors away from Gennaro and the kids. He could see another door nearer the front, which was marked to laboratory. Whatever that meant. He had an idea, and he hoped that he was right. The door had a blue hazard sign. The raptors were coming closer. Grant turned and slammed into the door and moved beyond it into a deep worn silence. He turned. Yes! He was where he wanted to be, in the hatchery. Beneath infrared lights, long tables with rows of eggs and low clinging mist. The rockers and the tables clicked and whirred in a steady motion. The mist poured over the sides of the tables and drifted onto the floor, where it disappeared, evaporated. Grant ran directly to the rear of the hatchery into a glass-walled laboratory with ultraviolet light. His clothing glowed blue. He looked around at the glass regions. Beakers full of pipettes, and glass dishes, all delicate laboratory equipment. The raptors entered the room, cautiously at first, sniffing the humid air, looking at the long, rocking tables of eggs. The lead animal wiped its bloody jaw with the back of its forearm. Silently, the raptors passed between the long tables. The animals moved through the room in a coordinated way, ducking from time to time to peer beneath the tables. They were looking for him. Grant crouched and moved to the back of the laboratory and looked up and saw the metal hood marked with a skull and crossbones. A sign said, "Caution! Biogenic toxins, A4 precautions required." Grant remembered that Regis had said there were powerful poisons only a few molecules can kill instantaneously. The hood lay flush against the surface of the lab table. Grant could not slip his hand under it. He tried to open it. There was no door, no handle. There was no way he could see. Grant rose slowly and glanced back to the main room. The raptors were still moving among the tables. He turned to the hood. He saw an odd metal fixture sunk into the surface of the table. It looked like an outdoor electrical outlet with a round cover. He flipped the cover, saw a button and pressed it. With a soft hiss, the hood slid upward to the ceiling. He saw glass shelves above him and rows of bottles marked with skulls and crossbones. He peered at the tables. CCK55, Tetra Alpha Secretion, Thiamulvin, blah blah blah. The fluids glowed pale green in the ultraviolet. Nearby, he saw a glass dish with syringes in it. The syringes were small, each containing a tiny amount of green glowing fluid. Crouched in the blue darkness, Grant reached for the dish of syringes. The needles on the syringes were capped in plastic. He removed one, pulling it off with his teeth. He looked at the thin needle. He moved forward, toward the raptors. He had devoted his whole life to studying dinosaurs. Now he would see how much he really knew. Velociraptors were small carnivorous dinosaurs, like oviraptors and Dromaeosaurus. Animals that were long thought to steal eggs. Just as certain modern birds ate the eggs of other birds. Grant had always assumed that velociraptors would eat dinosaurs' eggs if they could. He crept forward to the nearest egg on the table in the hatchery. Slowly, he reached up into the mist and took a large egg from the rocking table. The egg was almost the size of a football, cream-coloured with a faint pink speckling. He held the egg carefully while he stuck the needle through the shell and injected the contents into the syringe. The egg glowed faint blue. Grant bent down again beneath the table. He saw the legs of the raptors and the mist pouring down from the tables. He rolled the glowing egg across the floor toward the raptor. The raptors looked up, heard the faint rumble of the egg, and jerked their heads around. Then they resumed their slow, stalking search. The egg stopped several yards from the nearest raptor. Damn. Grant did it all again, quickly reaching up for an egg, bringing it down, injecting it, and rolling it towards the raptors. This time, the egg came to rest by the foot of one velociraptor. It rocked gently, clicking against the big toe claw. The raptor looked down in the surprise at its new gift. It bent over and sniffed the glowing leg. It rolled the egg with its snout along the floor for a moment, and it ignored it. The velociraptor stood upright and slowly moved on, continuing with its search. It wasn't working. Grant reached for a third egg, injected it with a fresh syringe. He held the glowing egg in his hands and rolled it again, but he rolled this one fast, like a bowling ball. The egg rattled across the floor loudly. One of the animals heard the sound, ducked down, saw it coming, and instinctively chased the moving object, gliding swiftly among the tables to intercept the egg as it rolled. The big jaw snapped down, bit into it, crushing the shell. The raptor stood. Pale albumin? Sure. Dripping from its jaws. It lit its lips noisily and snorted. It bit again, lapped the egg from the floor, but it didn't seem the least distressed. It bent over again to eat from the broken egg. Grant looked down to see what would happen. From across the room, the raptor saw him. It was looking right at him. The velociraptor snarled menacingly. It moved towards Grant, crossing the room in long, incredible, swift strides. Grant was shocked to see it happening and froze in panic when suddenly the animal made a gasping, gurgling sound and the big body pitched forward onto the ground. The heavy tail thumped on the floor in cold spasms. The raptor continued to make choking sounds. punctuated by intermittent loud shrieks. Foam bubbled from its mouth. The head flopped back and forth. The tail slammed and thumped. That's one, Grant thought. But it wasn't dying fast. It seemed to take forever to die. Grant reached for another egg and saw the other raptors in the room were frozen in mid-action. They listened to the sound of the dying animal. One cocked his head, then another. The first animal moved to look at the fallen raptor. The dying raptor was now twitching, the whole body shaking on the floor. It made pitiful moans. So much foam bubbled from its mouth that Grant could hardly see the head anymore. It flopped on the floor and moaned again. The second raptor bent over the fallen animal, examining it. It appeared to be puzzled by the death throes. Cautiously, it looked at the foaming head, then moved down to the twitching neck, the heaving ribs, the legs. And it took a bite from the hind leg. The dying animal snarled and suddenly lifted its head, twisted and sunk its teeth into the neck of its attacker. Well, that's two, Grant thought. But the standing animal wrenched free, blood foamed from its neck. It struck out with its hind claws and with a single swift movement ripped open the belly of the fallen animal. Calls of intestine fell out like fat snakes. The screams of the dying raptor filled the room. The attacker turned away as if fighting was suddenly too much trouble. It crossed the room, ducked down, and came up with a glowing egg. Grant watched as the raptor bit into it, the glowing material dripping down its chin. That makes two. The second raptor was stricken almost instantly, coughing and pitching forward. As it fell, it knocked over a table. A dozen of eggs rolled everywhere. Grant looked at the dismay. There was still a third raptor left. The raptor does... Yeah, no, do you know what Michael really does? Michael loves his intestines. It's a good way to go. Grant had one more syringe. With so many eggs rolling on the floor, he would have to do something else. He was trying to decide what to do. Grant looked up. The raptor had spotted him. The final raptor did not move for a long time. It just stared, and then it slowly came forward, stalking him, bobbing up and down, looking first beneath the tables, then above them. It moved deliberately, cautiously, with none of the swiftness it had displayed in the pack. A solitary animal now. It was careful. It never took its eyes off Grant. Grant looked around quickly. There was nowhere for him to hide. Nothing for him to do. Grant's gaze was fixed on the raptor, moving slowly, laterally. Grant moved. The belly doesn't have much blood vessels. It's good. The belly doesn't have as much blood vessels. It's good for keeping the PG-13 rating. I did not know that. Somewhere else. I kind of like the name. I did not actually know that. Interesting. I mean, don't get to see as many intestines in the movie, though. Unfortunately. Though I film that, which will probably make a lot of people sick. The more you know. The more you know. Grant's gaze was fixed on the raptor. I made that up. Oh, damn. God, you got me. Can't believe you've done this. Honestly, I wouldn't know. So I'll take it. Live it. Been got. I'll take back the more you know. He tried to keep as many tables as he could between himself and the advancing animal. Slowly, he moved to the left. The raptor advanced in the dark red gloom of the hatchery. His breath came in soft hisses through flared nostrils. Wait. You mean to tell me that people just go on the internet and lie? Grant felt eggs breaking beneath his feet, the yolks sticking to the soles of his shoes. He crouched down, felt the bulge of the radio in his pocket. The radio. He pulled it from his pocket and turned it on. Hello, this is Grant. Alan? Ellie said. Alan? Listen, just talk. Alan, is that you? Talk, he said again. Then he pushed the radio across the floor away from him. Alan, speak to me, please. Then a crackle and silence. The radio remained silent. What's the matter with her? Didn't she understand? In the darkness, the raptor came closer. Alan? The tinny voice from the radio made the big animal pause. It sniffed the air, as if sensing someone else in the room. Alan, it's me. I don't know if you can hear me. Raptor now turned away from Grant and moved toward the radio. Alan, please. Why didn't he push the radio further? The raptor was going towards it, but was too close. The Bigfoot came down very near him. Grant could see the pebbled skin, the soft green glow, the streaks of dried blood on the curved claw. He could smell the strong reptile odor. Alan, listen to me. Alan. The raptor bent over, poked the radio on the floor attentively. Its body was turned away from Grant. The big tail was right above Grant's head. Grant reached up and jabbed the syringe deep into the flesh of the tail and injected the poison. The velociraptor snarled and jumped. With frightening speed, it swung back towards Grant, jaws wide. It snapped, its jaws closing on the table leg, and jerked its head up. The table was knocked away and Grant fell back, now completely exposed. The raptor loomed over him, rising up, its head banging into the infrared lights above, making them swing crazily. "Alan!" The raptor reared back, lifted its claws, foot to kick. Grant rolled and the foot slammed down, just missing him. He felt a sharp, searing pain along his shoulder blades, the sudden warm flow of blood over his shirt. He rolled across the floor, crushing eggs and smearing his hands, its face. The raptor kicked again, smashing down the radio, spattering sparks. It snarled in a rage and kicked the third time, and Grant came to the wall. Nowhere else to go. The animal raised its foot a final time and toppled backwards. The animal was wheezing. Foam came from its mouth. Gennaro and kids came into the room. Grant signaled them to stay back. The girl looked at the dying animal and softly said, "Wow." Gennaro helped Grant to his feet. They all turned and ran for the control room. Control. I get that. Definitely a dinosaur. Tim was astonished to find the screen in the control room was now flashing on and off. Oh wait, I was actually somewhat right. Smooth muscles are like stomach, intestines, bladder have less arteries. Oh. We'll take everything you now say with a pinch of salt. What happened? Tim saw Dr. Grant staring at the screen and gingerly moving his hand toward the keyboard. "I don't know about computers," Grant said, shaking his head, but Tim was already sliding into his seat. He touched the screen rapidly. On the video monitors, he could see the boat moving closer to whatever the fuck it is. It was now only about 200 yards from the dock. On the other monitor, he saw the lodge with the raptors hanging down from the ceiling. On the radio, he heard the snarls. Well, I was meant to lie. I was meant to lie, but somewhat it was a lie that was truthful. "Do something, Timmy," Lex said. He pushed set grids, DNL. Even though it was flashing, the screen answered, "Warning! Don't fucking do it." "What does that mean?" Tim said. Gennaro snapped his finger. "That happened before. It means the auxiliary power is roll. You have to turn on the main power." "I do?" He pushed electrical main. Tim groaned. "What are you doing now?" Grant said. The whole screen was starting to flash. Tim pushed main. Nothing happened. The screen continued to flash. Tim pushed main grid, P. He felt sick to his stomach with fear. Main grid not active. The screen was still flashing. He pushed main set 1. Main power activated. All of the lights in the room came on. All the monitor screens stopped flashing. "Hey, all right." Tim pressed reset grids. Nothing happened for a moment. He glanced at the video monitors in the back of the main screen. "Which grid do you want to reset?" Grant said something that Tim didn't hear. He only heard the tension in his voice. He was looking at Tim, worried. Tim felt his heart thumping in his chest. Lex was yelling at him. He didn't want to look at the video monitor anymore. He could hear the sound of the bars bending at the lodge. He heard Malcolm say, "Dear God." He pushed lodge. Specify grid number to reset. Frozen. For a frozen, interminable moment, he couldn't remember the number. Then he remembered F4. He pressed that. Activating lodge grid F4. On the video monitor, he saw an explosion of sparks sputtering down from the ceiling of the hotel room. The monitor flared white. Lex shouted, "What did you do?" But almost immediately the image came back and they could see the raptors were caught between the bars, writhing and screaming in a hot cascade of sparks while Muldoon and the others cheered, their voices tinny over the radio. Amenable? No, it's... Where am I? Fuck, where did it go? Oh, no, my light just didn't see the T. Yeah, interminable. Interminable. Didn't see the T. That's it, interminable. Yep. I'm really good at reading. This is their fault that I'm reading. Fuck. "That's it," Grant said, slapping Tim on the back. "That's it, you did it." They were all standing and jumping up and down when Lex said, "What about the ship?" "The what?" "The ship," she said, pointing to the screen. On the monitor, the buildings beyond the bow of the ship, Jesus, put all the B's together, were much larger and moving to the right as the ship turned left and prepared to dock. He saw the crewmen heading up towards the bow, preparing to tie up. Tim scrambled back in his seat and started the startup screen. He studied the screen. Telecom VBB and Telecom RSD both looked like they might have something to do with the telephones. He pressed Telecom RSD. "You have 23 waiting calls or messages. Do you wish to receive them now?" He pushed no. "Maybe the ship was one of the waiting calls," Lex said. "Maybe that way you can get their phone number." He ignored her. Enter the number you wish to call or press F7 for the directory. He pressed F7. And suddenly names and numbers spilled all over the screen. An enormous directory. It wasn't alphabetical, and it took a while to scan it visually before he found what he was looking for. VSL and B, Freddy, 708 3902. Now all he had to do was figure out how to dial. He pushed a row of buttons on the bottom of the screen. Dial now, or dial later. He pushed dial now. We're sorry, your call cannot be completed. Please try again. He tried again. He heard a dial tone and the tone of numbers, and then the tone of numbers being automatically dialed in rapid succession. Is that it? Ron said. Pretty good, Timmy. But they're almost there. On the screen, they could see the prow of the ship closing onto the dock. They heard a high-pitched squeal, and then a voice said, hello? John, this is Freddy. Do you read me? Over. Tim picked up the phone on the console bay. On the console, but only heard a dial tone. Hello, John, this is Freddy. Over. Answer it, Lex said. Now they were picking up all the phones, lifting every receiver. Hello? Control, this is Freddy. Do you read me? Tim grabbed the receiver. Hello, this is Tim Murphy. I need you to... Say that again. Didn't get you, John. Don't land the boat. Do you hear me? Sounds like some dang kid. Tim said, don't land the ship. Come back to the island. Wait, did he... His name was Murphy? I didn't get a name. Gennaro reached for the phone. Let me do this. Can you get his name? There was a sharp crackle of static. I do not remember reading this passage in Jurassic Park. What, the major shot or the many phone calls? Where am I? Fuck. There was a sharp crackle. Got to be a joke. It's a freaking hammer in. Tim was working on the keyboard. There was probably some kind of way to find out who Freddy was. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, answer me now. Son, came the drawled reply. We don't know who the hell you are, but you're not funny. We're about to die. We've got work to do now. Identify yourself properly. Try this for identification, Captain Farrell. Gennaro said, if you don't turn this boat around and return to this island immediately, you'll be found in violation of Section 509 of the Uniform Act. You'll be subject to revocation? Sure. Of license. Yes. Maritime. Cool. Penalties in excess of $50,000 and 5 years in jail. Do you hear that? There was silence. Do you copy, Captain Farrell? And then distantly they heard a voice say, I copy. And another voice said, all I heard stand. The boat began to turn away from the dock. Lex began to cheer. Tim collapsed back in the chair, wiping the sweat from his forehead. What's the Uniform Whatever Act? Who the hell knows, Gennaro said. They all watched in the screen in satisfaction. The boat was heading away from shore. I guess that's the hard part finished. Grant shook his head. The hard part is just beginning. 7th iteration. This is final few pages. Destroying the world. Wait, what was the quote actually? Increasingly, the mathematics would demand the courage to face the implications. Ian Malcolm. They moved Malcolm into another room in the lodge to clean the bed. Hammond seemed to revive and begin bustling around, straightening up. Well, at least disaster is averted. What disaster is that? Malcolm said, sighing. Well, they didn't get free and overrun the world. Malcolm sat up on one elbow. You were worried about that? Surely that's what was at stake. Those animals, lacking predators, might get out, destroy the planet. You egomaniacal idiot, Malcolm said in fury. Do you have any idea what you're talking about? You think you can just destroy the planet? My, what intoxicating power you must have. Malcolm sank on the bed. You can't destroy this planet. You can't even come close. Most people believe that the planet is in jeopardy. Well, it's not, Malcolm said. All the experts agree that the planet is in trouble. Malcolm sighed. Let me tell you about our planet. Our planet is 4.5 billion years old. There has been life on this planet for nearly that long. 3.8 billion years. The first bacteria relate to the first multicellular animals, then the first complex creatures in the sea, on the land, and the great sweeping ages of animals, the amphibians, the dinosaurs, the mammals, each lasting millions upon millions of years. Great dynasties of creatures arising, flourishing, dying away. All that happened against a background of continuous and violent upheaval, mountain ranges thrust up and eroded away, Commentary impacts, volcanic eruptions, oceans rising and falling, whole continents moving, endless, constant, and violent change. Even today, the greatest geographical feature of the planet comes from two continents colliding, buckling up to make the Himalayan mountain range over millions of years. The planet has survived everything. In its time, it will survive us. Hammond frowned. Just because it lasted a long time doesn't mean it's permanent. If there was a radiation accident, suppose there was, Malcolm said. Let's say we had a bad one, all the plants and animals died, and the Earth was clicking hot for 100,000 years. Life would survive somewhere, under the soil, perhaps frozen in Arctic ice. After all these years, when the planet was no longer inhospitable, life would again spread over the planet. The evolutionary process would begin again. Might take a few billion years to regain its present variety, and of course, it would be very different to what it is now, but the Earth would survive our folly. Life would survive our folly. Only we, Malcolm said, think it wouldn't. Hammond said, well, if the ozone layer gets thinner, there will be more ultraviolet radiation reaching the surface. So what? Well, it will cause skin cancer. Malcolm shook his head. Ultraviolet radiation is good for life. It's powerful energy. It promotes mutation, change. Many forms of life will thrive under UV radiation. Many others will die out, Hammond said. Malcolm sighed. You think this is the first time such a thing has happened? Don't you know about oxygen? I know it is necessary for life. It is now, Malcolm said. But oxygen is actually metabolic poison. It's a corrosive gas, like fluorine, which is used to etch glass. And when oxygen was first produced as a waste product by certain plant cells, say around 3 billion years ago, it created a crisis for all other life on the planet. Those plant cells were polluting the environment with a deadly poison. They were exhaling a lethal gas and building up its concentration. A planet like Venus is less than 1% oxygen. On Earth, the concentration of oxygen was going up rapidly, 5, 10, eventually 21%. Earth had an atmosphere of pure poison. Incompatible with life. Hammond looked irritated. So what is your point? The modern plants will be incorporated too? No, Malcolm said. My point is that life on Earth can take care of itself. In the thinking of a human being, 100 years is a long time. 100 years ago, we didn't have cars and airplanes, computer and vaccines. It was a whole different world. But to the Earth, 100 years is nothing. 1,000,000 years is nothing. This planet lives and breathes on a much faster scale. We can't imagine its slow and powerful rhythms. And we haven't got the humility to try. We have been residents here for a blink of an eye. If we are gone tomorrow, the Earth will not miss us. And we very well might be gone, Hammond said. Yes, Malcolm said. We might. So what are you saying? We shouldn't care about the environment? No, of course not. Then what? Malcolm coughed and stared into the distance. Let's be clear. The planet is not in jeopardy. We are in jeopardy. We haven't got the power to destroy the planet or to save it, but we might have the power to save ourselves. You know, in retrospect, I always thought Christian was apathetic to human hegemony. Not anti-global warming. Why was I wrong? Man's just like, fuck it. Global warming ain't gonna do shit. But again, yeah, the Earth will just fucking live. We all die. We move on. This planet's gonna kick us a lot longer than we're all here. Big old Earth just like, you're next. Goodbye. It will move. It will thrive. It will be happy. Probably. Ain't gonna care if we go. Malcolm isn't wrong. Under control. 4 hours had passed. It was the afternoon. The sun was falling. The air condition was back on in the control room, and the computer was functioning properly. As near as they could determine, out of the 24 people on the island, 8 were dead and 6 were missing. The visitor centre and the safari lodge were both secure. The northern perimeter seemed to be clear of dinosaurs. They had called authorities in San Jose for help. The Costa Rican National Guard was on its way, as well as an air ambulance to carry Malcolm to a hospital. But over the phone, the Costa Rican Guard had been distinctly cautious. Undoubtedly, calls would go back and forth between San Jose and Washington before help was finally sent over to the island. And now it was growing late in the day. If the helicopter did not arrive soon, they would have to wait until morning. I mean, yeah, we're not going to destroy the ball rock and the water. We can sure ruin it for everything else. Oh, yeah, we can ruin it for everything else, and it will fix itself in a good, 1,000,000 years, 100, We fuck it up, and they'll be like, all right, it'll take time to heal, I guess. And that'll be it. In the meantime, there was nothing to do but wait. The ship was returning. The crew had discovered 3 young raptors scampering around in the about in one of the air aft holds and had killed the animals. On our Nublar, the immediate danger appeared to have passed. Everyone was either in the visitor centre or the lodge. Tim had gotten quite good with the computer and he flashed up a new screen. Annabibbles! What the hell is it doing? Now it says there are fewer animals. Grant nodded. Probably. And he said Jurassic Park is finally coming under control. Meaning what? Equilibrium. Grant pointed to the monitors. One of them, the little bastards. We all remember our little bastards. The hypsilophodonts, the little bastards, leapt into the air as a pack of velociraptors entered the field from the west. The fences have been down for hours. The animals are mingling with each other. Populations reach an equilibrium. A true Jurassic equilibrium. I don't think it was supposed to happen, Gennaro said. The animals were never supposed to mix. Well, they are. On another monitor, Grant saw a pack of raptors racing at full speed across an open field toward a 4-ton hadrosaur. The hadrosaur turned to flee and one of the raptors jumped on its back, biting into the long neck, while the others raced forward, circled it and nipped at its legs, lashed up to slash at its belly with the powerful claws. Within minutes, 6 raptors had brought down a larger animal. We could definitely, I'm pretty sure we could knock the earth off this. Yeah, we probably could. We could definitely use all the water and pesky air we've got. But they would heal after us. Wait, is Muldoon alive? Pretty sure he is. I don't remember him dying. Yeah, no, he's still kicking. Yeah, he's literally just about to turn up. Grant stared silently. Ellie said, "Is it the way you imagined it?" "I don't know what I imagined," he said. He watched the monitor. "No, not exactly." Muldoon said quietly, "You know, it appears all the adult raptors are out right now." Grant didn't pay much attention at first. He just watched the monitors. The interaction of the great animals. In the south, a stegosaur was swinging its spiked tail, warily circling the baby tyrannosaur, which watched it, bemused, and occasionally lunged forward to nip ineffectively at the spikes. In the western quadrant, the adult triceratops were fighting among themselves, charging and locking horns. One animal already lay wounded and dying. Muldoon said, "We've got about an hour of good daylight left up to Grant if you want to try and find the nest." "Right, I do. I was thinking that when the Costa Ricans come, they will probably imagine this island to be a military problem. Something to destroy as soon as possible." "Damn right," Gennaro said. "They'll bomb it from the air," Muldoon said. "Perhaps napalm. Perhaps nerve gas as well. But from the air." "I hope they do," Gennaro said. How do you heal 100 nuclear warheads with half-life measured in Elvish calendar temporal units? You don't. You're fucked. Where are we? Fuck. I hope they do this. The island is too dangerous. Every animal on this island must be destroyed, and the sooner the better. Grant said, "That's not satisfactory. Let's get started." "I don't think you understand, Alan," Gennaro said. "It's my opinion that this island is too dangerous. It must be destroyed. Every animal on this island must be destroyed, and that's what the Costa Rican Guard will do. I think we should leave it in their capable hands. Don't you understand what I'm saying?" "Perfectly," Grant said. "And what's your problem?" Gennaro said, "It's a military operation. Let them do it." "No. We have to take care of it. Leave it to the experts." Grant remembered how he found Gennaro just 6 hours earlier, huddled and terrified in the cab of a truck in the maintenance building, and suddenly he lost his temper and slammed the lawyer up against the concrete wall. "Listen, you little bastard. You have a responsibility to the situation. You're going to start living up to it." "I am," Gennaro said, coughing. "No, you're not. You shrieked. You shrieked your responsibility all along from the very beginning. The hell, you sold investors on an undertaking you didn't fully understand. You're part owner of a business you failed to supervise. You didn't check the activities of a man whom you knew from experience to be a liar, and you permitted that man to screw around with the most dangerous technology in history." Gennaro coughed again. When I'm taking responsibility. "No. You're still shirking it, whatever. You can't do that anymore." He releases Gennaro, who bent over, gasping for breath. Grant turned to Muldoon. "What have we got for weapons?" Muldoon said, "We've got some control nets and shock rods." "How good are the shock rods?" Grant said. "They're like bang sticks for sharks. They have explosive tips, delivers a shock on contact, high voltage, low amps, no fatal, but it's definitely incapacitate. You know what I mean. That's not going to do it, not in the nest." What nest? Gennaro said. The raptor nest, Ellie said. The raptor nest? Grant said, have you got any radio collars? I'm sure we do. Get one. And is there anything else that can be used for defence? Muldoon shook his head. Well, get whatever you can. Muldoon went away. Grant turned to Gennaro. Your island is a mess, Mr. Gennaro. Your experiment is a mess. It has to be cleaned up. But you can't do that until you know the extent of the mess. And that means finding the nest on the island, especially the raptor's nest. That will be hidden. We have to find them, inspect them, and count the eggs. We have to account for every animal born on this island. Then we can burn it down. But first we have a little work to do. Ellie was looking at the wall map, which now showed the animal ranges. Tim was working with the keyboard. She pointed to the map. The raptors are localized in the southern area, down where the volcanic steam fields are. Maybe they like the warmth. Is there any places to hide down there? Turns out there is, she said. There's a massive concrete waterworks to control flooding in the southern flatlands. Big underground area, water and shade. That'll be where they'll be. Ellie said, I think there's an entrance from the beach too. She turned to the consoles and said, Tim, can you show us the cutaways on the waterworks? Tim wasn't listening. Tim? He was hunched over the keyboard. Just a minute. I found something. What is it? It's an unmarked storage room. I don't know what's in there. Then it might have weapons, Grant said. They were all behind the maintenance building, unlocking steel storm door, lifting it up to the sunlight to reveal concrete steps going down to the earth. Damned, Arnold, Muldoon said as he hobbled down the steps. He must have known this was here all along. Maybe not, Grant said. He didn't even try to go here. Well then, Hammond knew. Somebody knew. Where is Hammond now? Stood at the lodge. They reached the bottom of the stairs and came upon rows of gas masks hanging on the wall in plastic containers. They shone their flashlights deeper into the room and saw several heavy glass cubes 2 feet high with steel caps. Grant could see small dark spheres in the cubes. It was like being in a room of giant pepper mills, he thought. Muldoon opened the cap of one, reached and withdrew a sphere. He turned the light on it, frowning. I'll be damned. What is it? Rory 12. It's an inhalation nerve gas. There's lots of grenades. Just lots and lots of grenades. Let's get started, Grant said grimly. He likes me, Lex said. They were standing in the garage of the visitor centre by the little raptor that Grant had captured in the tunnel. She was petting the raptor through the cage bars. The animal rubbed up against her hand. I'll be careful there, Muldoon said. They can give a nasty bite. He likes me. His name is Clarence. Clarence? Yes. Muldoon was holding the leather collar with a small metal box attached to it. Grant heard the high-pitched beeping in the headset. Is it a problem putting the collar on the animal? Lex was still petting the raptor, reaching through the cage. I bet he'll let me put it on him, she said. I wouldn't try. They're unpredictable. I bet he'll let me, she said. So Muldoon gave Lex the collar and she held it out so the raptor could smell it. Then she slowly slipped it around the neck. The raptor turned brighter green when Lex buckled it and closed the Velcro. Turned the Velcro over the buckle. The animal relaxed and turned paler again. I'll be damned, Muldoon said. It's a chameleon, Lex said. The other raptors couldn't do that, Muldoon said. The wild animal must be different. By the way, he said, turning to Grant, if they're all born females, how do they breed? You never explained that bit about the frog DNA. It's not frog DNA, Grant said. It's amphibian DNA. But phenomenon happens to be particularly well documented in frogs. Especially West African frogs, if I remember. What phenomenon is that? Gender transition, Grant said. Actually, it's just plain changing sex. Grant explained that a number of plants and animals were known to have the ability to change their sex during life. Orchids, some fish, shrimp, and now frogs. Frogs that have observed to lay eggs were able to change, over a period of months, into complete males. They first adopted the fighting stance of males, then developed the mating whistle of males, then simulated the hormones, grew the gonads of males, and eventually they successfully mated with females. You're kidding, Gennaro said. And what makes it happen? Apparently the change is stimulated by an environment in which all the animals are the same sex. In this situation, some of the amphibians will spontaneously begin to change from female to male. And you think that's what happened to the dinosaurs? Until you have a better explanation. Yes, I think that's what happened. Now shall we find this nest? A baby. They're turning the freaking frogs gay. They're going to put it in the water. I didn't realise the Act 3 of Jurassic Park had so much talking. Did I read the novelization of the movie? Do you know what, actually, considering I think when you get to the T-Rex breakout onwards, you get a lot more murder and death. But most of this book is just talking. Like, it is just them going, we should do this, let's do this. Do you want to do this? Yes, we should do this. Are you dying? Yes, I'm dying. Are you dying? Yes, I'm dying. That's it. That's the book. That's it. Took us 2 streams to get to the point where the T-Rex broke out. It is just talking. And death. They piled into the jeep and Lex lifted the raptor from the cage. The animal seemed quite calm, almost tame in her hands. She gave a final pat on the head and released it. The animal wouldn't leave. Go on, shoo, Lex said. Go home. The raptor turned and ran off. Grant held the receiver and wore the headphones. Muldoon drove. The car bounced along the main road, going south. Gennaro turned to Grant and said, what is it like, this nest? Nobody knows, Grant said. But I thought you dug them up. I've dug up fossil dinosaur nests, but all fossils are distorted by the weight of millennia. We made some hypotheses, some superstitions, but nobody really knows what the nests are like. Grant listened to the beeps and signaled Muldoon to head further west. It looked more and more as if Ellie had been correct. The nest was in the southern volcanic fields. Grant shook his head. You have to realise we don't know all the details about nesting behaviour in living reptiles like crocodiles or alligators. They're difficult animals to study. But it was known that in the case of the American alligators, only the female guarded the nest, awaiting the time of hatching. The bull alligator spent days in early spring lying beside the female in a mating pair, blowing bubbles on her cheeks to bring her receptivity, finally causing her to lift her tail and allow him to insert his penis. By the time the female built her nest, 2 months later, the male was gone. The female guarded her cone-shaped, 3-foot-high nest ferociously, and when the hatchlings began to squeak and emerge from the shells, she often helped break open the eggs, then nudged them towards the water, sometimes carrying them in her mouth. So, adult alligators protect the young. Yes, and there is also a kind of group of protection. Young alligators make a distinctive distress cry, and it brings any adult who hears it, parent or not, to their assistance with a fully fledged violent attack. Not a threat display, a full-on attack. I remember I enjoyed reading Jurassic Park immensely. I should reread it to see if it feels this. Do you know what? This is my 3rd time reading the book, and I've listened to the audiobook twice, and I still love it every fucking second. Other than the raptor scene. The raptor scene can do one. Fuck the raptor scene. But I love it that's why deciding to read it on stream, even though I have read it too many times. It is the best one, as it says right there. Best book ever. Fact checked. There we go. But dinos aren't reptiles, Muldoon said. Exactly. The dinosaur nesting pattern could be much more closely related to that of any variety of birds. So you actually mean you don't know, Gennaro said. You don't know what the nest is like. No, I don't. Well, so much for the damn experts. Grant ignored him. Already he could smell the sulphur. In the upper head he saw the rising steam of volcanic fields. The ground was hot, Gennaro thought as he walked forward. It was actually hot. Here and there mud bubbled and spat up on the ground, and the reeking sulphur steam hissed in the great shoulder-high plumes. He felt as if he was walking through hell. He looked at Grant walking along with the headset on, listening to the beeps. Grant, in his cowboy boots and his jeans and his Hawaiian shirt, apparently very cool. Gennaro didn't feel cool. He was frightened to be in this stinking, hellish place with the velociraptors somewhere around. He didn't understand how Grant could be so calm. Or the woman, Sattler. She was walking along too, just looking calmly around. Doesn't this bother you, Gennaro said. I mean, worry you. We've got to do it, Grant said. He didn't say anything else. They all walked forward among the bubbling steam vents. Gennaro fingered the gas grenades as he clipped onto his belt. He turned to Ellie. Why isn't he worried about it? Maybe he is. But he also thought about this his whole life. Gennaro nodded and wondered what it would be like, whether there was anything he'd waited for his whole life. He decided there wasn't anything. I'm with Gennaro. Grant squinted in the sunlight. Ahead through veils of steam, an animal crouched, looked at them, and then it scampered away. Was that the raptor? Ellie said. I think so. Or another one, juvenile. I would run away now. I'd just be like, right, time to go die by raptors. Leading us on? Maybe. Elliot told him how raptors had played the fence to keep her attention while others climbed onto the roof. If true, such behaviour implied a mental capacity that was beyond nearly all forms of life on Earth. Classically, the ability to invent and execute a plan was believed to be limited to 3 species: chimpanzees, gorillas, and human beings. Now there was a possibility that dinosaur might be able to do such a thing too. The raptor appeared again, darting into the light, then jumping away with a squeak. It really did seem to be leading them on. SEAL Team 6 can handle an S, that's what they're trained for. Nah, dude in a Hawaiian shirt, a girl, and a lawyer. They'll all be fine. Gennaro frowned. How smart are they? He said. If you think of them as birds, then you have to wonder. Some new studies show the grey parrot has as much symbolic intelligence as chimpanzee, and chimpanzees can definitely use language. Now, researchers are finding out that parrots have the emotional development of a 3-year-old child, but their intelligent is unquestioned. Parrots can definitely reason symbolically. But I've never heard anyone killed by a parrot, Gennaro grumbled. Distantly, they could hear the sound of the surf on the island's shore. The volcanic fields were behind them now, and they faced a field of boulders. The little raptor climbed onto one rock and then abruptly disappeared. Where'd he go? Ellie said. Grant was listening to the earphones. The beeping stopped. He's gone. They hurried forward and found in the mist of rocks a small hole like a rabbit hole. It was perhaps 2 feet in diameter. As they watched, the juvenile raptor reappeared, blinking in the light, then it scampered away. No way, Gennaro said. No way am I going down there. Grant said nothing. He and Ellie began to plug in equipment. Soon, he had a small video camera attached to a handheld monitor. He tied the camera to a rope, turned it on, and lowered it into the hole. You can't see anything that way, Gennaro said. Let it adjust, Grant said. There was enough light along the upper tunnel for them to see the smooth dirt walls. And then the tunnel opened out suddenly, abruptly. Over the microphone, they heard a squeaking sound, then a lower trumpeting sound. More noises coming from many animals. Sounds like an nest, all right, Ellie said. But you can't see anything, Gennaro said as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. No, but I can hear. He listened for a while and longer, and then hauled the camera out, set it on the ground. Let's get started. He climbed up toward the hole. Ellie went to get a flashlight and a shock stick. Grant pulled on the gas mark over his face, crouched down awkwardly, extending his legs backwards. You can't be serious about going down there, Gennaro said. Grant nodded. Doesn't thrill me. I'll go first, then Ellie, then you come after. Now, wait a minute, Gennaro said in sudden alarm. Why don't we drop these nerve gas grenades down the hole, then go down after? Doesn't that make more sense? Ellie, you got the flashlight, sorry. She held the flashlight to Grant. What about it? What do you say? Gennaro said. I'd like nothing better. He backed down. You ever seen anything die from poison? No. It generally causes convulsions. Bad convulsions. Well, I'm sorry if it's unpleasant, but look, Grant said. We're going into this nest to find out how many animals have hatched. If you kill the animals first, some of them fall onto the nest in their spasms. That will ruin our ability to see what was there. So we can't do that. But you made these animals, Mr. Gennaro. I didn't. Your money did. Your efforts did. You helped create them. They're your creation. You can't just kill them just because you feel a little nervous now. I'm not a little nervous. I'm scared shit. Follow me, Grant said. Ellie handed him a shock stick. He pushed backward through the hole and grunted. Tight fit. Grant exhaled and extended his arms forward and first. There was a kind of whoosh and he was gone. The hole gaped empty and black. Gennaro, are you so dumb? Don't you know you have 60 more pages of story left? No, we're fine. We're fine. Scare me like that. It's like 24. Don't say that. Fuck. Got scared. What happened to him? Gennaro said, alarmed. Ellie stepped forward and leaned close to the hole. She clicked the radio, said softly, Alan. There was a long silence. Then they heard faintly, I'm here. Is everything all right, Alan? Another long silence. When Grant finally spoke, his voice sounded distinctly odd, almost awestruck. Everything's fine, he said. Almost something. Yeah. In the lodge, John Hammond... Oh. Yeah, all right. In the lodge, John Hammond paced back and forth in Malcolm's room. Hammond was impatient and uncomfortable. Since marshalling his effort for his last outburst, Malcolm had slipped into a coma, and now it appeared that to Hammond that he might actually die. Of course, the helicopter had been sent for him, but God knows when it would arrive. The thought that Malcolm might die in the meantime filled Hammond with anxiety and dread. And Hammond found it all much worse because he disliked the mathematician so much. It was worse than if the man was his friend. Hammond felt that Malcolm's death, should it occur, would be the final rebuke. and that this was more than Hammond could bear. In any case, the smell in the room was quite ghastly. Quite ghastly. The rotten decay of human flesh. Everything burn, Malcolm said, tossing on the pillow. Is he waking up? Hammond said. Harding shook his head. What did he say? Something about paradise? I didn't catch it, Harding said. Hammond paced some more. He pushed the window wider, trying to get some fresh air. Finally, when he couldn't stand it, he said, Is there any problem about going outside? I don't think so, no. I think this area is all right, Harding said. And then they died. The end. And that's it, kids. That's the story of life. Well, look, I'm going outside for a bit. All right, Harding said. He adjusted the flow of the antibiotics. I'll be back soon. All right. Hammond left, stepping out into the daylight, wondering why he'd bothered to justify himself to Harding. After all, that man was his employee. Yes, it is. The sun was out, and now Hammond took it in as an omen. Say what they would, he knew his park had promise. And even the impetuous fool Gennaro decided to burn it to the ground. It would not make a difference. Hammond knew that in 2 separate vaults at InGen headquarters there was dozens of frozen embryos. It would not be a problem to grow them again on another island, elsewhere in the world. And if it had problems here, then the next time they would solve those problems. That was how progress occurred, by solving problems. And he thought about it, and he concluded that Wu had not really been the man for the job. Wu had obviously been sloppy, too casual with his great undertaking, and Wu had been too preoccupied with the idea of making improvements. Instead of making dinosaurs, he wanted to improve on them. Hammond suspected darkly that he was the reason for the downfall of his park. Wu was the reason. Although he had to admit that John Arnold was ill-suited for the job of chief engineer. Arnold had impressive credentials, but at this point in his career he was tired, and he was a fretful warrior, and he hadn't been organised, and he had missed things, important things. In truth, neither Wu nor Arnold had the most important characteristic. Hammond decided the characteristic of vision. The great sweeping act of imagination which invoked a marvellous park, where children pressed against the fences wondering at the extraordinary creatures come alive from the storybooks. Real vision. The ability to see the future. The ability to marshal resources to make the future vision a reality. No. Neither Wu nor Arnold had been suited to the task, and for a matter of fact, Ed Regis had a poor choice too. Harding was at the best indifferent choice. Muldoon was a drunk. Hammond shook his head. He would do better next time. Lost in his thoughts, he headed toward his bungalow, following his little path that ran north for the visitor centre. He passed one of the workmen, who nodded. Hammond did not return the nod. He found the Tican workman to be uninformally insolent. To tell the truth, the choice of the island of Costa Rica had been unwise. He would not make obvious mistakes again. When it came, the roar of the dinosaur seemed frighteningly close. Hammond spun so quickly he fell on the path, and when he looked back, he thought he saw the shadow of the juvenile T-Rex, moving in the foliage beside the flagstone path, toward him. What was the T-Rex doing here? Why was it outside the fences? Hammond felt a flash of rage, and then he saw the workman running for his life, and Hammond took the moment to get to his feet and dash blindly into the forest on the opposite side of the path. He was plunged into darkness. He stumbled and fell, his face mashed into wet leaves and damp earth as he staggered back to his feet, ran onwards and fell again, and then he ran once more. Now he was moving down a steep hillside, and he couldn't keep his balance. He tumbled helplessly, rolling and spinning over the soft ground, before finally coming to a stop at the foot of a hill, his face splashed in shallow, tepid water, which gurgled around him and ran up his nose. He was lying face down in a little stream. He had panicked. What a fool! He should have gone to his bungalow, Hammond cursed himself as he got to his feet. He felt a sharp pain in the right ankle which brought the tears in his eyes. He tested it. It might be broken. He forced himself to put weight on it. Yes. Almost certainly broken. In the control room, Lex said to Tim, I wish they had taken them with us to the nest. It's too dangerous for us, Lex. We have to stay here. Hey, listen to this one. He pressed another button, and the recorded T-Rex played over the speakers. Let's see, I have that one. That's neat. That's better than the other one. You can do it too. And if you push this, you get reverb. Let me try. She pushed the button and the Tyrannosaur roared again. Can we make it last longer? She said. Sure. Just twist this thing here. The kids are the reason he fell, and I think it's the greatest thing ever. Lying at the bottom of the hill, Hammond heard the Tyrannosaur roar, bellowing through the jungle. Jesus! He shivered hearing that sound. It was a scream from some other world. He waited to see what would happen, what the Tyrannosaur would do. Had it already gotten the workman? Hammond waited, hearing only the buzz of the jungle, cicadas, until he realised he was holding his breath and let out a long sigh. With his injured ankle, he couldn't climb the hill. He would have to wait at the bottom of the ravine. After the Tyrannosaur had gone, he would call for help. Meanwhile, he was in no danger here. Then he heard an ample voice say, "Come on, Timmy, I get to try it too. Come on, let me make some noise." The kids. The Tyrannosaur roared again, but this time it had musical overtones and kind of an echo. "Neat one," said the little girl. "Do it again." "Those damn kids." The old stupidity man don't even know what you put in your own park. Legit. He should have never brought those kids. They'd been nothing from trouble from the beginning. Nobody wanted them around. Hammond only bought them because he thought it would stop Gennaro from destroying the resort. But Gennaro was going to do it anyway. The kids had obviously gotten into the control room and started fooling around. Now, who allowed that? He felt his heart begin to race and felt an uneasy shortness of breath. He forced himself to relax. There was nothing wrong. Although he could not climb up the hill, he could not be more than 100 yards from his own bungalow in the visitor centre. Hammond sat down on the damp earth, listening to the sounds of the jungle around him. Then after a while, he began to shout for help. He is a right fucking dick. Jesus, believe me. You missed some of the word. He is a fucking arsehole. Malcolm's voice was no louder than a whisper. "Everything looks different on the other side." Harding leaned close to him. "On the other side?" He thought Malcolm was talking about dying. "When shifts," Malcolm said. "Shifts?" Malcolm didn't answer. His dry lips moved. Paradigm? Yeah, I think it says paradigm. Paradigm shifts? Sure. Harding said he knew about paradigm shifts. For the last 2 decades, there had been a fashionable way to talk about scientific change. Paradigm was just another word for a model. But as scientists used it, the term meant something more, a worldview, a larger way of seeing the world. Paradigm shifts were said to occur whenever science made a major change in the world, in the view of the world. Such changes were relatively rare, occurring once a century. Darwin evolution had forced a paradigm change, so a shift. Quantum mechanics had forced a smaller shift. No. Not paradigm. Beyond. Beyond? Harding said. Don't care about what anymore. The map is not the world, it is, in this case. Where the fuck was I? Harding sighed. Despite all efforts, Malcolm was rapidly slipping into terminal delirium. His fever was higher and he was almost out of antibiotics. "What don't you care about?" "Anything," Malcolm said. "Besides, everything looks different on the other side." And he smiled. Descent. "You're crazy," Gennaro said to Ellie Sattler, watching as she squeezed backward into the rabbit hole, stretching her arms forward. "You're crazy to do that." She smiled. "Probably," she said. She reached forward with her outstretched hands and pushed backwards to the sides of the hole, and suddenly she was gone. The hole gaped black. Gennaro began to sweat. He turned to Muldoon, who was standing by the jeep. "I'm not doing this," he said. "Yes, you are." "I can't do this." "I can't." "They're waiting for you," Muldoon said. "You have to." "Christ only knows what's down there," Gennaro said. "I'm telling you, I can't do it." "You have to." Gennaro turned away and looked at the hole and looked back. "I can't. You can't make me." "I suppose not." He held up a stainless steel prod. "Ever felt a shock stick?" "No. Doesn't do much," Muldoon said. "Almost never fatal. Gently knocks you flat. Perhaps loosens your bowels, but it doesn't have any permanent effect, at least not on dinos. But then, people are much smaller." Gennaro looked at the stick. "You wouldn't." "I think you better go down there and count those animals," Muldoon said. "And you better hurry." Gennaro looked back at the hole at the black opening, a mount in the earth. Then he looked at Muldoon, standing there large and impassive. Gennaro was sweating and lightheaded. He started to walk towards the hole. From a distance it appeared small, but as he came closer, it seemed to grow larger. "That's it," Muldoon said. Gennaro climbed backward into the hole. But he began to feel too frightened to continue that way. The idea of backing into something unknown filled him with dread. So at last minute, he turned around and climbed headfirst into the hole, extending his arms forward and kicking his feet, because at least he would see where he was going. He pulled the gas mask over his face, and suddenly he was rushing forward, sliding into blackness, seeing the dirt walls disappear into the darkness before him. Yeah, he finally died. Really do not last long. How long did they last? What are we on? 3. You lasted 3 hours. Jeez, you're broken. The walls became narrower, much narrower, terrifyingly narrow. And he was lost in the pain of squeezing compression that had suddenly become worse and worse and that crushed the air out of his lungs. He was only dimly aware that the tunnel tilted slightly upwards along a path, shifting his body, leaving him gasping and seeing spots before his eyes, and the pain was extreme. Then, suddenly, the tunnel tilted downwards and it became wider, and Gennaro felt rough surfaces, concrete and cold air. His body was suddenly free and he was bouncing and tumbling on the concrete. And then he fell. Give me my rain. I made sure to have backups. I'm not fucking dumb when it comes to those shitty AirPods. I have backups for a reason. I like hearing my stuff. There we go. Voices in the darkness. Fingers touching him, reaching forward from the whispered voices. The air was cold like a cave. Okay? He looks okay, yes. He's breathing. Fine. A female hand caressing his face. It was Ellie. Can you hear? She whispered. Why is everyone whispering? He said. Because. She pointed. Gennaro turned and rolled and got slowly to his feet. He stared as his vision grew accustomed to the darkness, but the first thing he saw gleaming in the darkness was eyes. Glowing green eyes. Dozens of eyes all around him. He was on a concrete ledge, a kind of embankment, about 7 feet above the floor. Large steel junction boxes provided a makeshift hiding place, protecting them from the view of the 2 full-size velociraptors that stood directly before them, not 5 feet away. The animals were dark green with brownish tiger stripes. They stood upright, balancing on their stiff, extended tails. They were totally silent, looking around watchfully with large dark eyes. At the feet of the adults, baby velociraptors skittered and chirped. Further in the darkness, juveniles tumbled and played, giving short snarls and growls. Gennaro did not dare breathe. 2 raptors. Crouched on the ledge, he was only a foot or 2 above the animal's head height. The raptors were edgy, their heads jerking nervously up and down. From time to time, they snorted impatiently. Then they moved off, turning back to the main group. As his eyes adjusted, Gennaro could now see that there was some kind of enormous underground structure. It was man-made. There were seams of poor concrete and the nubs of protruding steel rods. Within the vast echoing space were many animals. Gennaro guessed at least 30 raptors, perhaps more. It was a colony, Grant said, whispering. 4 or 6 adults, the rest are juveniles and infants, at least 2 hatchlings, 1 last year, 1 this year. These babies look about 4 months old, probably hatched in April. Don't worry about it, Laura. Don't worry about it. One of the babies, curious, scampered up to the ledge and came towards them, squeaking. It was now only 10 feet away. Oh, Jesus, Gennaro said. But immediately one of the animals came forward, raised its head and gently nudged the baby back. The baby chittered a protest and hopped up to stand on the snout of the adult. The animal moved slowly, allowing the baby to climb over its head, down its neck and onto its back. From that protected spot, the infant turned, chirped noisily at the 3 intruders. The adults still didn't notice them. I don't get it. Why aren't they attacking? They must not see us. And there aren't any eggs at the moment. They're more relaxed. Relaxed? Gennaro said. How long do we stay here? Long enough to get a count. As Grant saw it, there were 3 nests, attached by 3 sets of parents. The division of territory was centered roughly around the nest, although the offspring seemed to be overlapping and run into different territories. The adults were benign with the young ones and tougher with the juveniles, occasionally snapping at the older animals when they played too rough. At that moment, a juvenile raptor came up to Ellie and rubbed its head against her leg. She looked down and saw the leather collar on the black box. It was damp in one place, and it had chafed the skin of the younger animal's neck. The juvenile whimpered. In the big room below, one of the animals turned curiously toward the sound. You think I can take it off? She asked. Just do it quickly. Okay. she said, squatting beside the small animal. It whimpered again. The adults snorted, bobbed their heads. Ellie petted the juvenile, trying to soothe it to silence its whimpering. She moved her hands towards the level collar. She lifted back the Velcro tab with a tearing sound. The adults jerked their heads. Then one began to walk towards her. "Oh shit," Gennaro said under his breath. "Don't move. Stay calm," Grant said. The adult walked past them, its long curved toes clicking on the concrete. The animal paused in front of Ellie, who stayed crouched by the juvenile behind a steel box. The juvenile was exposed, and Ellie's hand was still on the collar. The adult raised its head, sniffed the air. The adult's big head was very close to her hand, but he could see her because of the junction box. A tongue flicked out. Grant reached for a gas grenade, plucked it from a belt, and held it in his thumb. Gennaro put a restraining hand, shook his head, and nodded to Ellie. She wasn't wearing a mask. Grant set the grenade down and reached for a shock rod. The adult was still very close to Ellie. Ellie eased the leather strap off. The metal of the buckle clicked on the concrete. The adult's head jerked forward frantically and cocked his head to one side, curious. It was moving forward again to investigate, when the little juvenile squeaked happily and scampered away. The adult remained by Ellie. Then finally it turned back and walked to the centre of the nest. Jesus. Gennaro gave a long exhalation. Can we leave? No, but I think we can get some work done now. In the phosphorescent green glow of the night vision goggles, Grant peered down to the room from the ledge, looking at the first nest. It was made of mud and straw, formed into a broad, shallow basket shape. He counted the remains of 14 eggs. Of course, he couldn't count the actual shells from the distance, and in any case, they were long since broken and scattered over the floor. But he was able to count... Jesus, that finished quick. But he was able to count the indentations in the mud. Apparently the raptors had made the nest shortly before the eggs were laid. The eggs left a permanent impression in the mud. He also saw evidence that at least one had broken. He credited 13 animals. The second nest had broken in half, but Grant estimated that it contained 9 eggshells. The third nest had 15 eggs, but it appeared 3 eggs had broken early. "What's the total?" Gennaro said. 34 born, Grant said. "And how many do you see?" Grant shook his head. The animals were running all over the cavernous interior space, darting in and out of the light. "I've been watching," Ellie said, shining her light down on the notepad. "You'd have to take photos to be sure, but the snout markings of the infants are all different. My count is 33. "And juveniles?" 22. "But Alan, don't you know anything else funny about them?" "Like what?" "How they arrange themselves spatially. They're falling into some sort of pattern of arrangement in the room." Grant frowned. He said, "It's pretty dark." No. What do you mean you don't want 55 babies running around? That's not even including the adults. No, look for yourself. Watch the little ones. When they're playing, they tumble and run every which way. But in between, when the babies are standing around, notice how they orientate their bodies. They face either that wall or the opposite wall. It's like they line up. I don't know, Ellie. You think there's a colony metastructure? Like bees? No, not exactly, she said. It's more subtle than that. It's just a tendency. And the babies do it? No, they all do it. The adults do it too. Watch them. They're telling you they line up. Grant frowned. Seemed as if she was right. The animals engaged in all sort of behaviour, but during pauses, moments when they were watching or relaxing, they seemed to orientate themselves in particular ways, almost as if the invisible lines on the floor. Beats me. Maybe there's a breeze. I don't feel one, Alan. What are they doing? Some kind of social organisation expressed on spatial structure? That doesn't make sense, because they all do it. Gennaro flipped his watch. I knew this thing would come in handy one day. Beneath the watch was a compass. Grant said, "You have much use for that in court?" "No, my wife gave it to me," he explained, "for my birthday." He peered at the compass. "Well," he said, "they're not lined up according to anything. I guess they're just sort of northeast, southwest? Something like that? Maybe they're hearing something, turning their heads so they can hear." Grant frowned. Or maybe it's just ritual behaviour, species-specific behaviour that serves to identify them to one another. Or maybe they don't have any broader meaning. Or maybe they're weird. Maybe dinosaurs are weird. Maybe it's communication? Grant was thinking the same thing. Bees communicate spatially by doing kind of dance. Perhaps dinosaurs could do the same thing. Why don't they go outside? They're nocturnal. Yes, but it almost seems like they're hiding. Branch shrugged. In the next moment, the infants began to squeak and hop excitedly. The adults watched curiously for a moment, then with hoots and cries that ached in the dark, all the dinosaurs wheeled and ran, heading down the concrete tunnel into the darkness beyond. Hammond. Also, is it the 50 on top of the 30 they found? No. Technically, no. So, the 30 they ended up finding in the park would have been the ones that, like, the juveniles and probably the adults that had escaped. So, it's more than likely this is all the ones that they were counting, plus then more. This is basically, like, all the raptors that aren't currently out in the park, which are the adults. But, yeah, so this should be... Probably what they were counting on the cameras would have been the ones that were a part of this system. John Hammond sat down heavily in the damp earth of the hillside and tried to catch his breath. Dear God, it was hot, he thought, hot and humid. He felt as if he was breathing through a sponge. He looked down at the stream bed, now 40 feet below. It seemed like hours since he had left the trickling water and began to climb the hill. His ankle was now swollen and dark purple. He couldn't put any weight on it at all. He was forced to hop up the hill on his other leg, which now burned with pain. And he was thirsty. Before leaving the stream behind, he drank from it, even though he knew that was unwise. Now he felt dizzy, and the world sometimes swirled around him. He was having trouble with his balance, but he knew he had to climb the hill and get back to the path above. Hammond thought he heard footsteps on the path several times during the previous hour, and each time he shouted for help. But somehow his voice hadn't carried far enough, and he hadn't been rescued. And so the afternoon wore on. He began to realise that he would have to climb the hillside, injured leg or not. And that's what he was doing now. Those damn kids. Hammond shook his head, trying to clear him. He'd been climbing for more than an hour. He'd only gone a third distance up the hill. He was tired, panting like an old dog. His leg throbbed. He was dizzy, of course. He knew perfectly well he was in no danger. He was almost within sight of his bungalow, for God's sake. But he had to admit he was tired. Sitting on the hillside, he found he didn't really want to move anymore. Why shouldn't he be tired, he thought. He was 76 years old. There was no age to be climbing around hillsides. Even though Hammond was in peak condition for a man his age. Personally, he expected to live to be 100. But it's just a matter of taking care of yourself, taking care of things as they came up. Certainly had plenty of reasons to live, other parks to build, other wonders to create. He heard a squeaking, then a chittering sound. Some kind of small birds hopping in the undergrowth. He'd been hearing small animals afternoon. There were all kinds of things out here. Rats, possums, snakes. The squeaking got louder. Small bits of earth rolled down the hillside past him. Something was coming. Then he saw the dark green animal hopping down the hill towards him. Then another. Then another. Compies, he thought with a chill. Scavengers. The compies didn't look dangerous. They were about as big as chickens, and they moved up and down like little nervous jerks like chickens. But he knew they were poisonous. The bites had a slow-acting poison that was used to kill crippled animals. Crippled animals, he thought, frowning. The first of the compies perched on the hillside staring at him, stayed about 5 feet away beyond his reach, and just watched him. And others came down soon after, and they stood in a row. Venomous, not poisonous. Come on, Mike. Hey, let them have it. They little poisonous to themselves. Look, you always have to remember the fucking dealos aren't fucking gonna do anything to you, but in this book they do. They hopped up and down and chittered and waved their little clawed hands. Shoo, get out, he said and threw a rock. The compies backed up, but only a foot or two. They weren't afraid. They seemed to know he couldn't hurt them. Angrily, Hammond tore a branch from a tree and swiped at them with it. The compies dodged, nipped at the leaves, squeaked happily. They seemed to think he was playing a game. He thought again about the poison. He remembered that one of the handlers had been bit by a compy in a cage. The handler had said the poison was like a narcotic. Peaceful, dreamy, no pain. He just wanted to go to sleep. The hell with that, he thought. Hammond picked up a rock, aimed carefully, and threw it, striking one compy flat in the chest. The little animal shrieked in alarm as it was knocked backwards and rolled over its tail. The animals immediately backed away. Better. Hammond turned away and started to climb up the hill once more, holding branches in both hands. He hopped onto his leg, feeling the ache in his thigh. He had not gone more than 10 feet when one of the compies jumped on his back. He flung his arms wildly, knocking the animal away, but he lost his balance and slid back down the hillside. As he came to a stop, a second compy sprang forward and took a tiny nip from his hand. He looked with horror, seeing the blood flow over his fingers. He turned and began to scramble up the hillside again. Another compy jumped on his shoulder, and he felt a brief pain as it bit into the back of his neck. He shrieked and smacked the animal away. He turned to face the animals, breathing hard, and they all stood around him, hopping up and down and cocking their heads, watching him. From one bite of his neck, he felt the warmth flow through his shoulders, down his spine. Lying on his back on the hillside, he began to feel strangely relaxed, detached from himself. But he realized that nothing was wrong. No error had been made. Malcolm was quite incorrect in his analysis. Hammond lay very still as child in its crib, and he felt wonderfully peaceful. When the next compy came and bit his ankle, he made only half effort to kick it away. The little animals edged closer. Soon they were chittering all around him like excited birds. He raised his head, and another compy jumped on his chest. The animal was surprisingly light and delicate. Hammond felt only slight pain, very slight, as the compy bent down to chew on his neck. The beach. Chasing the dinosaurs, following the curves and slopes of concrete, Grant suddenly burst out through a cavernous opening and found himself standing on the beach. He fucking deserved to die that way. Looking at the Pacific Ocean. All around him, the young velociraptors were scampering and kicking in the sand, but one by one, the animals moved back into the shade of the palm trees at the edge of the mangrove swamp, and they stood, lined up in their peculiar fashion, watching the ocean. They stared fixedly to the south. "I don't get it," Gennaro said. "I don't either," Grant said, "except they clearly don't like the sun." It was very sunny on the beach. It wasn't very sunny on the beach. A light mist blew, and the ocean was hazy. But why suddenly leave the nest? What had brought an entire colony to the beach? Gennaro flipped the dial on his watch and looked the way the dinosaurs were before. Northeast, southwest, same direction. Behind the beach, deeper in the woods, they heard the hum of electric fence. "At least we know how they got outside the fence," Ellie said. Then they heard the throb of marine diesels and thought, through the mist they saw the ship approaching, a large freighter. It slowly moved north. "So that's why they came out," Gennaro said. "They must have heard it coming." As the freighter passed, all the animals watched, standing silent except for the occasional chirp and squeak. Grant was struck by the coordination of their behaviour, the way they moved and acted as a group. Perhaps was not really so mysterious. In his mind, he reviewed the sequences of events they had first began in the cave. First, the infants had been agitated, then the adults had noticed, and finally all the animals were stampeded to the beach. The sequence seemed to imply that the younger animals, with keener hearing, had detected the boat first, then the adults had led the troop out to the beach. As Grant looked, he saw the adults were in charge now. There was a clear spatial organisation along the beach, and as the animals settled down, it was not loose or shifting, the way it had been inside. Rather, it was quite regular, almost regimented. The adults were spaced every 10 yards or so, each adult surrounded by a cluster of infants. The juveniles were positioned between them and slightly ahead of the adults. But Grant also saw all the adults were not equal. There was a female with a distinctive stripe along her head, and she was in the very centre of the group as it arranged along the beach. The same female had stayed in the centre of the nest area too. He guessed, like certain monkey troops, the raptors were organised around a matriarchal pecking order. And this, the striped animal, was the female alpha. The males he saw arranged defensively at the perimeter of the group, but unlike monkeys, which were loosely flexible organised, the dinosaurs settled into rigid arrangement. Almost a military formation, it seemed. Then, too, there was oddity of the northeast-southwest spatial orientation. That was beyond Grant. But in another sense, he was not surprised. Paleontologists had been digging up bones so long that they'd forgotten how little information could be gleaned from a skeleton. Bones might tell you something about gross appearance of animals, its height and weight. They might tell you about how the muscles attach, and therefore something about crude behaviour of the animal life. They might give you some clues to the few diseases that affected the bone, but a skeleton was a poor thing, really, from which to try and deduce the total behaviour of an organism. Since bones were all paleontologists had, bones were what they used. Like other paleontologists, Grant had become an expert of working with bones. And somewhere along the way, he'd started to forget the unprovable possibilities that dinosaurs might be truly different animals, that they might possess behaviours and social lives, organised along the utterly mysterious to their later mammalian descendants. That since dinosaurs were fundamentally birds. Oh my god, Grant said. He stared at the raptors. Ranged along the beach in a rigid formation, silently watching the boat. He suddenly understood what he was looking at. Those animals. Gennaro said, shaking his head. They sure are desperate to escape from here. No, Grant said. They don't want to escape at all. They don't? No. They want to migrate. Approaching dark. Migrating! That's fantastic, Ellie said. Yes, Grant said. He was grinning. Ellie said, where do you think they suppose they want to go? I don't know, Grant said, and then the big helicopters burst through the fog, thundering and wheeling over the land, the underbellies heavy with armament. The raptors scattered in alarm as one of the helicopters circled back, following the line of the surf that moved inland on the beach. A door flung open as soldiers in olive uniforms came running toward them. Grant heard the rapid babble of voices in Spanish and saw Muldoon was already aboard with the kids. One of the soldiers said in English, please, you will come with us. Please, there is no time here. Grant looked back at the beach where the raptors had been, and they were gone. All the animals had vanished. It was as if they never existed. The soldiers were tugging at him, and he allowed himself to be led beneath the thumping blades and climbing up to the big door. Muldoon leaned over and shouted in Grant's ear, they want us out of here now. They're gonna do it now. The soldiers pushed Grant and Ellie and Gennaro into their seats and helped them clip into the harnesses. Tim and Lex waved to him, and he suddenly saw how young they were, and how exhausted. Lex was yawning and leaning against her brother's shoulder. An officer came toward Grant and shouted, Signor, are you in charge? No, Grant said, I'm not in charge. Who is in charge, please? I don't know. The officer went to Gennaro and asked the same question. Are you in charge? No. The officer looked at Ellie but said nothing to her. The door was left open of the helicopter as it lifted away. Grant leaned out to see if he could catch a last look at the raptors, but then the helicopter was above the palm tree moving north over the island. Grant leaned to Muldoon. What about the others? Muldoon shouted, they've already taken Hardin and some workmen. Hammond had an accident, found him near his bungalow. Must have fallen. Is he alright? No. Compy's got him. What about Malcolm? Muldoon shook his head. Grant felt too tired to feel much of anything. He turned away and looked back out the door. It was getting dark now, and in the fading light he could barely see the little Rex, with bloody jaws, crouched over a hadrosaur by the edge of the lagoon, and looking up at the helicopter, roaring as it passed. Somewhere behind they heard explosions, and then ahead they saw another helicopter wheeling through the mist above the visitor centre, and a moment later the building burst into a bright orange fireball, and Lex began to cry, and Ellie put her arm around her and tried to get her to not look. Grant was staring down at the ground, and he had a last glimpse of the little bastards leaping gracefully as gazelles moments before another explosion flared bright beneath them. The helicopter gained altitude and then moved east over the ocean. Grant sat back in his seat. He thought of the dinosaurs, standing on the beach, and wondered what they would migrate if they could. And he realised he would never know, and he felt sad and relieved in the same moment. The officer came forward again, bending close to his face. Are you in charge? No, Grant said. Please, senor, who is in charge? Nobody. The helicopter gained speed as it headed toward the mainland. It was cold now, and the soldiers muscled the door closed. As they did, Grant looked back just once, and saw the island against a deep purple sky, cloaked in a deep mist that blurred the white-hot explosions that burst rapidly, one after another, until it seemed the entire island was glowing a diminishing bright spot in a darkening light. Ian is dead. Epilogue, San Jose. Days went by. The government was polite and put them up in a nice hotel in San Jose. They were free to come and go and call whoever they wished, but they were not permitted to leave the country. Each day a young man from the American embassy came to visit and asked if they needed anything, and explained that Washington was doing everything they could to hasten their departure. But there was a plain fact that many people had died in a territorial possession of Costa Rica. The plain fact was the ecological disaster had been narrowly averted. The government of Costa Rica felt it had been misled and deceived by John Hammond and his plans for the island. Under the circumstances, the government was not to suppose any survivors in a hurry. They did not permit the body of Hammond or Ian Malcolm. They simply waited. Each day, it seemed to Grant, he was taken to another government office, where he was questioned by another courteous, intelligent government officer. They made him go over the story again and again. How Grant met John Hammond, what Grant knew of the product, how Grant received the facts from New York, why Grant had gone to the island, and what happened on the island. The same details again and again, day after day, the same story. For a long time, Grant thought they must believe he was lying and that there was something they wanted him to tell, although he could not imagine what it was. Yet in some odd way they seemed to be waiting. Finally, he was sitting around the swimming pool of the hotel one afternoon watching Tim and Lex splash when an American in khakis walked up. "We've never met. My name is Marty Gutierrez. I'm a researcher here at the Carrara station." "Oh," Grant said, "you were the one who found the original species of the compy." "That's right, yes." "You must be eager to go home." "Yes, I only have a few days left to dig before the winter sets in Montana, you know. The first snow usually comes in August." "Is that why Hammond's Foundation supported northern digs? Because intact genetic material from dinosaurs was more likely to be recovered from cold climates?" "That's what I presume, yes." Gutierrez nodded. "He was a clever man, Mr. Hammond." Grant said nothing. "The authorities won't tell you," Gutierrez said, "because they're afraid and perhaps also resentful of you for what you have done. But something very peculiar is happening in the rural regions." "Biting the babies?" "No, thankfully that's stopped. But something else. This spring, in the Ismaloa section, which is north, some unknown animals ate the crops in a peculiar manner. They moved each day in a straight line, almost as straight as a row, from coast to the mountains into the jungle." Grant said upright. "Like a migration." Gutierrez said, "Wouldn't you say?" "What crops?" "But it was odd. They would only eat agma beans and soy and sometimes chickens." Grant said, "Food rich in lysine." "What happened to those animals?" "Presumably," Gutierrez said, "they entered the jungles. In any case, they've not been found. Of course, it'd be difficult to search for them in the jungles. A search party could spend years in those mountains with nothing to show." "And we're being kept here because..." Gutierrez shrugged. "The government is worried. Perhaps there are more animals, more trouble. They're feeling cautious." "Do you think there are more animals?" Grant said. "I can't say. Can you?" "No, I can't say." "But you suspect?" Grant nodded. "Possibly there are, yes." "I agree." Gutierrez pushed up from his chair. He waved to Tim and Lex playing in the pool. "Probably they'll send the children home. There is no reason not to do that." He put on his sunglasses. "Enjoy your stay with us, Dr. Grant. It is a lovely country." Grant said, "You're telling me we're not going anywhere?" "None of us is going anywhere, Dr. Grant," Gutierrez said, smiling, and then he turned back and walked towards the entrance of the hotel. She's fucking done. Ladies and gentlemen, Jurassic Park. Done. Ta-da! That's it. That is how it ends. Straight up, that is how it ends. They are in Costa Rica. And they stay in Costa Rica. Muldoon made it. Muldoon, my love, it is... I don't know, it never mentions his tiny booty shorts that I have love for. Oh, what a man.
Clever girl.
Though I'm always still pissed that, you know, Muldoon dies so quick in that. When I found out he lived, I was like, you motherfuckers. Yes, your boys made it. Gennaro and Muldoon can go live their lives being dicks to each other. Okay, yeah, you gotta get rid of the wife and the kid, but yeah. No, honestly, I tell you this for a fact, every time. The reason you can't... Right, we don't need the rain anymore. You can bugger off. The reason that I get why this wasn't adapted in the way that the book to movie isn't adapted. Because, fuck me. All it does is talk. It is my favourite. But all it does... But again, you cannot do half of that shit. You cannot rip out a man's intestines and have a Dilo fucking absolutely bite on his head. They're not going to let you do that. Fuck no. They're not going to let, they're not going to let someone get yanked out of a door and have him entirely eaten alive there and then. Muldoon's is the closest you get to a gruesome death because the raptor's on top of him. But you don't see anything. You don't see blood. You don't see anything. They did it in Alien one. But Alien's a horror movie. Technically. Jurassic Park's not. Jurassic Park's not. It's a dinosaur book. Alien, you can go it because it's Alien. Jurassic Park, it has horror elements, but it's not in that franchise. People said it was one of the, you look at the interviews on the first day the movie was released, And what you get is people go, oh my God, that was one of the scariest things I ever watched. And do you know what? Fine, as a fucking kid, when I watched Jurassic Park, I was like, oh my God, fuck the raptors. Oh my God, this is... But there were, there were adults there in 1992 going, oh my God, this is fucking kind of terrifying. Because it was. At the time. It still kind of is. No one wants to find out a velociraptor, basically a Deinonychus, can open a fucking door and come for you very easily. But again, there is stuff in this. This is one of the biggest debates about this book. You cannot adapt it. This is one fight they have. Because no one wants to start the movie with a baby's face being eaten. You would have to do so many changes if you were going to do it directly from the book. That's why the movie works so well, because it still has the adaptations, like the script book said, which I actually fucking put back, and I probably could fucking use this. As the script book says, Ed Regis gets, so for Waz, who fucking hasn't caught up, Ed Regis is a fucking character in a good, this much of the book. Ed Regis becomes Gennaro's character. Gennaro's character doesn't fucking get anywhere in the movie, because he takes on elements of Ed, and so does Ian Malcolm. And Ian Malcolm takes such a bigger role in the movies. And obviously, Ian Malcolm doesn't fucking die. Which then makes it funnier. Because the reason it then makes it funnier... They could have someone recast... They could. They won't do it, though. They never would. Some people say, do it. Fucking give us the movie of it. Anyway. But, again, Ian Malcolm, no, but it's even funnier. Because there's number 2. Right? Okay, just remember. We just finished number 1. They won't let them bury Ian. Oh, yeah, no shit. Here's number 2. Who's in number 2? Ian. Who wasn't phase... The baby wasn't phase 8 love bites. Oh, God. Yeah. Poor baby. Like in Jaws when the guy describes... Yeah, they could. This book could give you some fucking... The thing is, if I had to watch a baby raptor be ripped in half after that fucking scene fucking ruins me. I don't want to watch it. No, thank you. No. But it's clever because of the whole bird thing. I think this works because of the bird thing. But yeah. You should have seen my fucking thing when I first read this in uni. And I was like, sorry, Ian dies. I already had this. I bought them together. So I was like, what the fuck do you mean Ian dies? I have a whole nother book. The fuck do you mean? What do you mean he dies? And then, Oh, there's dinosaurs. Oh, I forgot about that. And then... This one doesn't have as many weird things. And then it's just like, Malcolm, and I'm like, sorry? What the fuck do you mean? Okay, I gotta bounce. No, thanks for the reading. Shut everything other. I will be off this very soon. Fuck me, I gotta be up early-ish. But yeah, it's just Ian Malcolm. Literally first bit. Ian Malcolm. Done. And I was like, sorry, what do you mean he fucking dies? There's a whole ass fucking book. I wonder which one's bigger. First is bigger. They should I would love to see how they would handle this, but I understand why they've handled it in the Jurassic Park way. I understand. You read the script book and it tells you all the different things. I understand it. There is a fuck ton of characters. There is some few issues, Social mathematicians weren't a thing. Yeah, they do straight up say, Ian Malcolm in this is described as a balding man who couldn't give a shit, where's the thing? And then they were like, yeah, then we hired Jeff Goldblum and we threw all that out the window because Jeff Goldblum. And I'm like, yes, and you should. Congrats. But it's the same way Alan Grant in the book isn't Alan Grant in the movie. There's very big differences. And then obviously Ellie's actually pretty kind of on point. Other than designs, Ellie's quite on point. Similarities, but she's got her whole life going, blah, blah, blah. But this whole book is just... I still want them fancy ones. But the whole book, I think, is one of my favourites, because I am not a person to do with horrors and whatnot. But this is done so well. Bar the fucking years of yapping, it just works. And the characters actually have reasons to last longer. Wu doesn't survive. Wu can't come back to make more dinosaurs. You'd never, if you had it based on this, we wouldn't have any other franchise. We'd have two, and that is it. Thank God we wouldn't have the mistake that was number 3. But we have, Wu goes out. Muldoon survives. Muldoon doesn't survive in the next one. Gennaro survives. Gennaro doesn't survive in the movie. They kill so many, but they were told in the movie, you are not allowed to hurt Alan Grant. You take that back. I fucking will not. Well, the science also doesn't support the science for the birth book either. Nah, science doesn't support anything in any of these. But then you think, when this was written, what we knew about dinosaurs is now very different to what we know now. They're still birds, whether they like it or not. They're still birds. But whatever you learn from this, well, that's going to be different 5 years down the line, and then another 5 years down the line, and then another 5 years down the line. And I mean, this is 6 years after the park. And, that one, I'll say this one. How many pages is this one? This one is only a few pages shorter. So that's 430. 458. This is literally, that is only a few bits. I love how you set up the horror tone at the beginning. The beginning is very well done. The baby thing's always weird. But it is just well done. Just so good. And so much of it. And Nedry's death scene is fucking so well done. So worried for the little girl. Same, and you watch, obviously that gets put into, movie of this one. But it's like, every part of this is a good horror story without it being over the top horror. It's just good. And obviously I only re-listened to this one the other day, but the best bit, the Carnotauruses. I won't probably read this on the stream unless I very ever want to do a reading stream again. As fun as it was, I had a very good time. I just don't know if I'll do it again anytime soon. If I do, might go down the line. If not, might try something new. But it's the same with this. This book, fuck me, I'm pretty sure. This, I'm pretty sure, doesn't take as long to get to the fucking dinosaurs. And even then, there's still a lot of talking. I don't like the Lost... What, the movie or the book? Because I do like the book. Okay, the book. I do like the book. But then when you make the connection from this to this, and why... But then he didn't want to write this. He didn't want to write this. He wanted... he wrote this, and then they wanted him to write another one. He didn't want to write this, but he wrote it. I still love it, but I really like Sarah. And I like some of the characters in it. And Lost World I will always love when it comes to the movie. But I also like Dodgson's death in this book. Harding lived. Harding got picked up. Everyone's fucking living. Unless you play the game, then you can kill him. Everyone lives, bar Wu, Malcolm, per se, and Hammond in the big things, and obviously Ed. They're out of the big lot. Timeline is a good book, but not who should. It's missing those hard turns into science. Yeah, I keep yeah, that one's also right in the back as well. Since this, not since this, has he given us thing? But yeah, I would say this out of these two, 10 out of 10. I would get, this one's a nice 7. Again, my view on if a book is good, do I like the characters, and does it have dinosaurs? It's a good book. I'm easily pleased. It has raptors. It has dinosaurs. And it has characters I like. So I'm set. I'm fucking set. I love these books, and I want the fancy ones. I do. They are some of my fucking favourites. But we have done this in about, I think, I don't know how many fucking hours. 4 streams worth is taken to read that book.